We're back, folks. Feels like it's been a lifetime, doesn't it? Last one of these was December. We had our Christmas gimmicks on for Bill Goldberg of all people, which is a bit I remain proud of. It's been too long, but we're back. Very special edition of Grin Grappler. It was always going to be special, right? It was our first tag team edition. We were all very excited about this a month ago. Took very, very different context, though, a few weeks back. And, I think, we had a little extra week here, let it breathe a little more. But we're here to talk about the Briscoes, which I can't wait to do, man. One of my favorite teams ever. So we've got a lot to talk about, 6 great matches, and a whole lot of other memories along the way. Bobby, how are you, mate?
I'm doing well, pal. I've been looking forward to this. It's going to be a really special show for us, I think.
Yeah, I hope so. We'll try our best to kind of follow that sort of Briscoes code of no matter what the circumstances, leaving it all out there. We'll try our best, folks. We'll do the best we can in this podcast form. The Oracle of Wrestling. How are you, buddy?
I'm well. I'm excited to do this gimmick this evening. I'm probably 90% of the time when I do these Grin Grapplers, I'm woefully unprepared, and this is one of those 90% of the times. I've seen 5 of the matches in complete form, one of which I chose to watch in highlight form to a bad Disturbed song, but that's okay.
Which one?
I don't know, some recent Disturbed song.
No, which match? Because that sounds like MV Zone days.
Oh no! This was the last one.
What? People are still making music videos?
Yeah.
That's kind of awesome that still exists, though. We're being real.
Oh yeah.
We're gonna. I sincerely hope on Tonight of All Nights we don't have a big argument about the last match on this fucking show, but we'll leave that as a kind of hook for later, folks. But Alex, how are you, mate?
Hey boys, always glad to be back. I'm good. Coming off the heels of a fun trip to San Antonio for the Royal Rumble. The shoot life's going well. I'm currently in the process of making the very poor decision to go to LA for WrestleMania. So the planning and preparation for that is underway, and happy to be here for this one tonight. Like you said, there's an eeriness now kind of about what we do, because it seems like there seems to be some significance around the people we cover more often than not. And yeah, like you said, we obviously settled on this well over a month ago, but some unfortunate context since that I hope we can do justice. A lot of people have tried to for Jay Briscoe and, kind of what he's meant to wrestling in his own way. So we'll give it the old college try and see how we turn out.
Yeah, it's a strange one, man. I mean, you guys all know this, but it took me a little longer than usual to come up with this kind of lineup and this sort of playlist, whatever you'd call it, for what we do for Grin Grappler. And a part of that was how do you cover both their careers in a way that's kind of that captures it, because both Mark and Jay, and especially Jay, were serious singles wrestlers. Jay was the world champ twice, and had a lot of very memorable matches over his 20 years in Ring of Honor. And we settled on a certain format, which I'll explain in a moment, but it is striking. Like, I remember we settled on the lineup, right? And I remember sending it to you guys, and we were kind of ready to roll, and it was that night. And I just, that's one of those things that, unfortunately, as wrestling fans, you have kind of a, you have like an experience dealing with like wrestling tragedy. It's a weird part of our fandom that we just all kind of accept. But I'll never quite forget, that waking up to that news. That was a particularly rough ordeal, especially because it felt so fresh because of what we were kind of putting together with this. So, as you said, Alex, we'll try our best to do the Briscoes justice, to Jay justice. There's a lot to talk about. A lot.
I would hate for us to harp on like the tragedy of it too much, but I think it is worth discussing of like, it's different, fuck, man, he was 38. I've watched them for 20 years, so I always assumed they were older than me, but they're, close. I think Mark's the same age as me, but it's a lot different. Like, Eddie was 38 or 39, and it was still like, after years of abusive things. Owen obviously was a tragedy, that type of thing, but it was still in the confines of like the ludicrousness of the wrestling business, that type of thing. And with this, it's just, life is fleeting, that type of thing. And, seemed like a good dude. And I honestly knew they were kind of like a big deal where they came from, but I didn't realize to the extent of like local businesses and schools shutting down for a day. It was pretty wild, man. And that is, I think, more than most wrestling deaths, because it becomes part of it, and almost to the point of like caricature and morbidly, the way we deal with it a lot of times is joking about it. With this one in particular, this is like a life is fragile type thing versus just like wrestling sucks, that type of thing.
Absolutely, and there's a kind of, as you said, this show is very much, intended to be a celebration of Jay and a celebration of their time together. It is worth noting, I'm going to try and do this throughout the night because we're going to often talk in past tense. Mark is still rolling, man. Like, Mark's going to have a hell of a run ahead of him, and I'm excited to watch it. But like, we're going to do that kind of naturally, and we obviously mean it with all respect to Mark, who still has a career ahead of him, and I'm excited to watch that. But no, yeah, you're absolutely right. And there's multiple reasons for that and factors for that. Like, the Briscoes have been around for the longest and are, these sort of mainstays in Ring of Honor and had been the constant throughout that promotion's history. But also, 2022 was commercially their biggest year by far, right? I mean, like, it's not even close. The FTR matches were the kind of widest reach they managed throughout their career in the States, to be more sort of specific. But, so it was all, I think, a lot of people, and Bob, I know you will kind of start here, as we just talk about our fandoms, the Briscoes. Bob, you're probably the best example of this on our show. Like, you really got to know the Briscoes at the end of 2021 with our Honor Hour show on Fightful, and then with the FTR program, which kind of, transformed their reputation, went from being something that a lot of us hardcore fans believe they're one of the great teams to kind of the wider wrestling world seeing, oh yeah, that top 5 that are alive thing is for real, So Bob, kind of lay out your fandom, mate. Go ahead.
Yes, it's interesting. Like, I was always familiar with them, and I was trying to think of like how that happened. I guess just kind of seeing their name across, wrestling sites or whatever. But yeah, didn't really get into them till the last Final Battle, just because that's the first time I really got to see him wrestle. And then from there, I remember they were on the Hammerstein GCW show. And then, yeah, the 3 FTR matches, man, just absolutely incredible, and really got me wanting to kind of dig deeper into them. And I was able to do that a little bit, before or after the last FTR match. I started a little bit, and then it just kind of throughout this month, I've been doing it more and more. And it's just, they were as good as they say they are. And you can't say that about a lot of teams.
Absolutely. And they have, perhaps, we'll kind of get into this as we go. I think the lineup kind of captures this, but they may have the most varied match catalog in like tag team wrestling history. It is an insane mix of styles they brought. A lot of people kind of had fun playing with this idea, and I'm not saying anything novel here, but a lot of people were talking about how the Young Bucks and FTR are like these kind of distant wrestling styles, right? And the Briscoes were the team that could walk that line and do both with pure comfort and ease. That's how special they were, freakish athletes, but also fucking brawlers and fighters. So they had that grit, they had that kind of dynamism in terms of their the excitement of their styles. So absolutely, Bob, there's you nailed it, mate. Oracle, what about yourself, pal? When you kind of become aware of the Briscoes, your own fandom of them, your experience watching them, so on and so forth.
I discovered the Briscoes probably when I was about 10 years old. My brother Dylan had some of the original Ring of Honor tapes from 02 that he gave me on VHS, and I put those suckers in and watched. I guess it was Jay versus Mark, right? Was the first or it was a tag? It was something like that, right?
First show.
First show. I think Jay wrestled Red because Mark wasn't old enough to wrestle on the first show.
Go. That's right. And
was his second,
and Mark was his second, right?
Yeah, he was there. Yeah.
Because
elsewhere, and I think JJ says, I can't remember the gimmick name, but they at one point they were wrestling under a hood elsewhere, so it's like bypass that. But I guess Ring of Honor avoided that for their first show.
I would my next sort of, because this was just like a few 02 shows that my brother lended me when I was 10. I obviously wasn't in like doing the tape trading deal because I had no money. But I would get the PWI mags or whatever. And I always remember the Joe Jay cage match.
Insane.
And Jay's like crimson mask. Yeah, it's like seeing it I don't even remember what magazine it was. It was probably PWI. And just being like, holy shit.
Gabe running around the ring.
Yeah.
You want me to stop it?
But over the years, I went and checked out some of the Ring of Honor stuff. Got to see him live in Dallas at WrestleMania 32 weekend.
Who'd they wrestle? I was trying to remember that.
I need to look that up. I should again. There's me being woefully unprepared.
I'll find it. Currently.
But they wrestled because it was a 2-part show, right? It's always a 2-part show, or at least it was back then.
Yeah, I went to the one that was going on during the takeover where Nakamura wrestled.
I was there. I was there as well. Yeah.
Nice.
And I actually got to briefly, meet the guys briefly, as in like at their merch table as we were going into the, give them fist pump or whatever. And of course, my dad was, buying the merch, doing the Papa Hales gimmick. I'd say probably around the same time, I got some of the old Ring of Honor compilations on Amazon and watched some of those, and which included the, finally being able to see the Jay and Samoa Joe cage match. Just incredible. Probably one of the most versatile tag teams ever. Great promos. They could wrestle in any setting, as we will talk about here tonight. Just two of my, even though I've never really like followed them that closely, two of my all-time favorites in terms of like when I think about the independents. So yeah, absolutely a huge Briscoes fan.
So Supercard of Honor 2016, night 1, the Briscoes team with War Machine. That's the Viking Raiders, Bob. Against Silas Young, the All Night Express, and the Beer City Bruiser. Was you at that one?
I remember that match. Yeah, it was fun. It was okay.
That show has Moose's best match ever when he wrestled Roderick Strong.
Yeah.
One of their best match against Roddy, huh?
Yeah.
Well, I never, folks. Learn something new every day. The second night of Supercard, there was a fatal 4-way tag. Briscoes, Daniels and Kaz, Motor City Machine Guns, Young Bucks. Fuck, man.
My God.
Lord. Like the all-star teams of the decade, right? That's insane.
I definitely remember both those matches. The 4-way tag, oddly, I remember a little bit less. But that's also later in the weekend when you're like 10 shows deep and like
you're also the Oracle of Wrestling
a little bit. So
Marty Jannetty's doing backstrokes in the Wyndham Fountain there.
On that note, Alex, what's your
MVP's drunk in the background?
Tremendous. Alex, your own experience with the Briscoes?
Yeah, I have to finish. There was at that show we talked about first with the 8-man tag. The seats were cramped, and I stood back kind of where the hard cam was, just like drinking my beer and like watching the show because I wanted to stretch my legs. There, like Billy Ospreay and another Brit wrestler who has since been canceled were back there, like they were somehow trying to sweet talk Gallows into like a booking on some show he had coming up. And I remember just like standing there and just kind of absorbing it all and looking over and locking eyes with Ospreay and just kind of giving the brother nod, like, "Hey man, how's it going?" So that was a fun memory from that show. This was, of course, happening while Gallows' girlfriend, I don't even know if they're still together, the Bullet Babe, Amber Gallows, was wrestling during intermission. Okay. No. All right. Well, to the wrestlers du jour, the Briscoes, this my introduction to independent wrestling in the 21st century was well, I mentioned music videos earlier. It was a lot of that. It was highlight videos that I just came across on forums I was on. I will always remember the first thing I saw was like Nick Mondo giving homeless Jimmy an assault driver off the back of a moving truck through a table and light tubes. And so I started like looking. I was like, I got to know more about this CZW place. This is crazy. And like in every highlight video or whatever I downloaded, I was like, there's these two dudes with shaved heads who look like they're 16. Like, what the hell's going on? They have matching red singlets and they're beating the shit out of each other. So, in a lot of ways, like my first exposure to the Briscoes was the first best of the best, when in the first round, classic Zandig, like, had to come up with the most convoluted shit. The first round would be a triple threat match, and then two people from that would advance to the next round. So the first round was the Jay and Mark and Nick Mondo in a triple threat that led to Jay and Mark in the second round. And that would have been before Ring of Honor started, I believe. So that was kind of like what started their like momentum. And then, you know, I became such a whore for the DVDs and like, I have to see it all. I have to see all this Ring of Honor stuff. So the Briscoes are literally, like I said, I've been watching them for 20 years. And so it in my brain is always just like, oh yeah, they're older than me. You know, Joe, I know you can somewhat sympathize. The pain that begins when you watch a UFC card and every fighter on it's younger than you it's a hard one. And so like, yeah, eventually like remembering, oh, they're my age, that type of thing. But the Briscoes were always good. You always wanted to see their match. I made a list that when we get to the part of other matches you'll recommend, you know, that type of thing. And I thought long and hard about it. And in the 20 years, like a lot of wrestlers, most wrestlers, you can point to like a notoriously bad match or bad outing. And like, I cannot think of an objectively bad Briscoes match, like ever, singles or tag team or anything like that. And then from like a personal standpoint, I have such a strong attachment to all those guys from that era, but like, either the first time we saw him on DVD or when we went to a show, my dad has no time for any modern wrestlers. He thought the Briscoes were fucking awesome. Like, and he especially liked Jay. And so like he talked about like, that's what wrestlers were like back in my day, like on, you know, big time wrestling and stuff. And he always talked about how authentic they seemed and just the chaos their matches brought. He was always a really big fan of. And my sister also was a big fan. We went to a show in San Antonio and they were doing like the autograph line or whatever. My sister's young and innocent and all that shit, and like it's a Ring of Honor show, so she's like standing out like a sore thumb. And she like walks past the Briscoes table and she like leans over and says to Jay, is like, are you guys doing pictures or something? And Jay said to her something like, well, you're supposed to pay that person over there, but get on in here. And like, so they took a picture with my sister, you know, gratis. And so my dad has like in his man cave or whatever pictures of like us with throughout like our family with famous people, and he's got like a picture with fucking Laura Bush and then my sister with the Briscoe brothers. So it's like, you know, the dichotomy of man type thing. And so they were always like kind of household favorites. And it was one of the rare times that I felt the need to kind of reach out to my dad when it happened to let him know. And he was like legit bummed. So I think that speaks to their authenticity though, of just like a bitter old man who doesn't really enjoy wrestling that much, like my dad, being able to find something to enjoy with them in it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's been a lot of stories like that, honestly. It's weird because, you know, obviously for reasons that have been explored in the last month, and honestly for this show aren't really relevant. We don't need to get into them tonight. But you know, the Briscoes did not have mainstream success in the US wrestling scene right now. I say the US wrestling scene because it is worth noting they were the champs in the top two promotions in Japan. Like they did a pretty good job, you know. But it is striking to me how many of us have stories about like our casual fan friends and family, to use that term loosely, loved the Briscoes, and it kind of suggests like how easily they could have caught on if things had gone differently and if things weren't said, and you know, so on and so forth. You know, I said this through on the Grin, but you know, my family has become like a sort of wrestling family over the last couple of years. Like my dad now watches and shit like that, and so it was cool sharing the FTR Briscoes thing with him. But whenever we would go to the shows, whether we were going to like, you know, a Rev Pro show, a Progress show, or whatever, there was like a rule within the family that my mum would not attend any of these shows unless they booked the Briscoes, in which case she would concede and come with us to see the Briscoes because they're one of one, bro. There's a lot of great wrestlers, but the Briscoes are different, you know. They were so entertaining, and that's the thing. I think you could enjoy them on so many levels. Like to my mum, they were just kind of like this sort of funny, also somewhat terrifying act. To me, they're like this great in ring. You know, they're all of the above. They're all of those things. So
to me, the thing with them that like the the real McCoy type thing, what I remember what caught on to me, and it kind of reminded me watching these matches early, was their entrance. Like, they weren't rockers walking down the aisle. The way they would like breathe and look in the ring and their opponents, and specifically like Mark would duck in and say a prayer before every match. It felt like these guys were going into a real fight. We talk about it all the time, the preservation of realism, and also we can be frank about it. They definitely look like two dudes that would beat the shit out of you. It fit.
It's just an authenticity, right? Everything they did felt believable and real, and that's a cliche that we repeat about every good, great wrestler ever. But it's not always true. It was about the Briscoes. You never felt like they were playing a role. They were those guys. They lived that life, and I think, for me personally, a lot of my love for kind of 2000 Ring of Honor, golden era Ring of Honor, is in hindsight, right? Like, so for me, the mid 2010s. Which is a time that at the time was kind of divisive, and I think history has been pretty kind too, because I think it's I think it's pretty clear that it's pretty clear the guy booking AEW now is a pretty big fan of that time too, based on everything he does on TV. But like that time with Ring of Honor's kind of marriage with New Japan, which ultimately did a lot of bad for the promotion, while the front of it was kind of good and the houses they were drawing and such, it hurt the promotion in the end, right? Mm-hmm. And that's fine, and that's a story for another day, and maybe we'll explore that on another show. But that was a big thing for my fandom was finding Ring of Honor's product through that. And I talk about Roddy a lot. Roddy was a highlight at that time, but the Briscoes were like, as soon as you see them, they're like the star attraction of the show. They just are. They always were, but especially by that point when a lot of the heavy hitters had kind of left and moved on to the national stage.
It literally became, you can at least count on the Briscoes to have a good match.
Yes, and the two matches in Act 3, I love for that reason, like exclusively, they're so striking in that regard. So I remember vividly, I've told this story elsewhere, we're doing Grin Grappler. This is a perfect place to kind of just compile these stories and cover them here. But, my brother and I went to a Ring of Honor show in London. It was York Hall. And the advertised matches were one Briscoe versus one Buck, the other Briscoe versus the other, but like 2 singles matches. And before the match started, the Briscoes grabbed the mic and said, we're the top 2 teams in the world, let's do a tag match. And they did it impromptu. And they did the classic wrestling deal where the Briscoes went over and they grabbed the belt celebrating, and the referee pulls it wasn't a title match, wasn't a sanctioned title. It's like just classic wrestling. And I've rewatched the match. It's damn good, but in person, it felt like the best match I've ever seen in my life. Like, it was just exhilarating because we didn't even know we were going to get it. And just, again, to kind of go back to the earlier point, like the Briscoes' ability, considering what their persona was, to match the Young Bucks in a kind of like thriller, like this kind of like spectacle spot fest, is honestly insane considering who they were as wrestlers. It says a lot about their range. But I have vivid memories of that. To circle back to your story earlier, Alex, in a different way, Ospreay and the gentleman you were referencing with the umbrella were wrestling on that show, and I'll never forget. Is after they wrestled before intermission, they came out after, and they were standing in the corner of the building just watching Ospreay and that gentleman wrestle, and they were watching it so intently. But they were not just watching the match; they would see something, and then they would look to the people and see their reaction to it. And I don't know, man. Maybe they were just chilling, hanging out. But I always felt that was like these 2 British guys who were just about to sign to Ring of Honor, who were new to the promotion. It always struck me that they were out there watching the way they were watching, because they were like the protectors of that promotion, like this, see what these new guys have got, to see if they fit it. And even though Ring of Honor wasn't where it was, that's still the way they treated it. There was a certain caliber that was required for that brand. So I always remember that. That's a super fond memory, and just that sentiment you just said, man. I would always stop in for Ring of Honor shows on occasion. I would always watch Final Battle, whatever it would be, and no matter what they were going through, and they went through some shit, no doubt. You knew if the Briscoes were on the card in some form or fashion, singles, tag, trios, whatever it may be, I got something to look forward to. They're reliable in that regard. So I think that's kind of their identity in Ring of Honor history.
I'll go ahead and tell the story here. Truncated version. It's kind of similar to what you're talking about as far as like reading a crowd and like wanting to engage with the crowd. Ring of Honor debuted in San Antonio. Well, first of all, the first Ring of Honor show I ever went to, I feel it's bringing up just because I forgot how ridiculous this is. WrestleMania 25 weekend in Houston was the first Ring of Honor show I ever went to. I was such a fucking mark. I was in the third row, but I made a point at some part of the show to run up and slap the steel sign just to say I did it, that type of thing. And that was the first time I met Vladimir the Superfan. Great guy. But it was the first time I ever saw one of the Briscoes live. It was Jay Briscoe. The match was El Generico and Kevin Steen, Jay Briscoe and Mango versus Chris Hero, Davey Richards, Eddie Edwards, and Incognito. And it was like this 8-man where the Lucha guys would do shit and then the other people would come in. I specifically remember Jay Briscoe was a lot bigger than I thought he was on TV, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, San Antonio, if anyone's followed me for any length of time on Twitter, I'll occasionally talk about this match and how everyone should see it. The first Ring of Honor show there was in 2013. They had it at the Shriners of San Antonio Hall. So you're waiting in line to get in and there's these shadow boxes with all these Shriner hats and pictures and shit. And there was one guy there that I think was by himself sitting in our section, and every match he just kept going, test his strength. It started really innocently. And then, by towards kind of close to the halfway through the show, it picked up, and then me and my friends are assholes too. So we're going to join in with them and be like, yeah, test his strength. And by Adam Cole and Davey Richards, which was the penultimate match, they did the thing where they started setting it up and then breaking it and getting the crowd to boo him, that type of thing. And then so the main event was Jay Briscoe and Davey Richards, and Jay comes out and it's I'm not proud of watching enough wrestling that I can decipher these things, but you can tell right away when they tie up, Jay just starts telling them, all right, forget what we talked about. This is what we're going to do. And Jay keeps teasing, putting the hand up for test of strength, and Davey keeps finding ways out of it. And so the crowd's and at this point now, the rest of the crowd has Stockholm syndrome and they just want to see it. So we'll shut up. And so they finally Davey's fuck it. If you're not going to do anything else, he goes and grabs it and they go to a test of strength and the place just goes ballistic. And so then they brawl and Jay throws him to the outside and comes over to our section of the crowd and they do a test of strength on the outside of the ring. And they're maneuvering around the ring interlocked with their hands. And eventually the match builds back to this test of strength, and Kevin Kelly's on commentary and you can tell he's audibly confused as to why they're wrestling this way. And then the match goes into high gear for the last 10 minutes and they just have turns out to be a fucking fantastic match. But it's one of those things that he was the champ defending the title and you could tell he was well, this ain't a pay-per-view. So, let's have some fun and do something here. And because of that, it's me and my friends that were there, it's one of our matches we always talk about is one of the most memorable experiences being at a show live. So they, and Mark too, just facial expressions and shit he would do to the crowd. He definitely they knew how to get the most out of the audience they were wrestling in front of.
Yeah. They're just wonderfully colorful performers, right? They're so animated and the thing too is in completely different ways.
Yeah.
Jay is intimidating, right? He has a real he had a real presence in that regard, and this kind of mean demeanor. And Mark is he's definitely frightening in his own way, but there is an incredibly comical kind of element to Mark's presence. Then it's their promo dynamic was always that way. Jay would cut the serious promo, and Mark would just be yelling shit about God only knows what along the way. So.
Well, there was the Man Up era, and then it was after Mark lost his teeth and then grew out that big beard, and he started just doing the crazy faces and whatnot. That's what we talked about. Their faces you would have seen in Apter's Mag in the early 80s, covered in blood and shit like that. And then before we move forward, I just want to call out All Pro Joe said their match with the Von Erichs. I wonder if he's implying that's their bad match. I do remember that match at the Ric Flair show. Everyone, the whole intrigue was, well, can them boys get a passable match out of the Von Erichs? And when it was over, I remember the general sentiment online is, well, that was fine.
Yeah, 2.25, brother. It was okay. They got through it. But it is worth noting. So there's a lot of people asking about the format of this show. So for those of you who don't know, usually the acts are broken up into portions of one's career. The first part of the career, the second part, the third part. This is different. The way that we've basically done this is, the way that I've set this up, I'm going to take the blame for this if it does not work out. This is the way I set it up. Was Act 1 are 2 matches from their first decade in Ring of Honor. And Act 3 are matches from their second decade in Ring of Honor. Their careers are long enough in that promotion, and it's beyond just Ring of Honor, but that's just for the sake of explaining it. And the middle act, because it is a big part of their careers, was their matches with each other in very different environments, in very different ways. They had famous matches with each other, many of which didn't make our cut here, but we picked 2 matches, very different matches for Act 2, because my hope was within those matches you could kind of get a look at them as singles wrestlers, which I think you certainly do, again, in quite unique fashion. So that's the way this worked. Everyone asked about the FTR matches. We will talk about the FTR matches later in like passing. Bob, myself, and Oracle have reviewed a couple of those in real time. Alex, I remember we talked about on one of the shows because you were at the first one. We'll talk about it later, but simply put, we've had a chance to cover them at great length. This was a chance to shine a light on some other matches, especially Act 3. Those are not particularly well-known matches, especially the first one, right? The one on TV one. So we'll get to them. We'll cover them. If you're watching this and you don't know that I love those 3 matches, you must have never seen me before. I talk about it on every fucking show. So FTR Briscoes are, some of my favorite wrestling ever, but we try to do something different with this show. We will talk about those matches at the end nonetheless. So with that in mind, I think we should jump into it, boys. Let's start here, Act 1. We jump in April 28th, 2007, opposite the Motor City Machine Guns, or then they were still rocking. There it is, the physical media is on display. Then they were still rocking with the Murder City Machine Guns, right? Which was a no-go for Double J and Spike TV, but nonetheless, a memorable pairing. When I was putting it together, I assumed that one of these matches would come up. There's a ring match the following year that is really, really great too, but it's a special time. Motor City Machine Guns are just getting rolling here, right? Alex, have they even been a team in TNA yet at this point?
I think they were just coming together because this was also fairly significant because at this point, most TNA talent wasn't able to work Ring of Honor anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, it's an interesting time. 2 of the more significant teams the last 20 years, locking them up here in what I would say is their physical primes. I think they kind of, all 4 men have evolved as wrestlers and are still great. Were still great, but, I think this is their kind of athletic peak here, so you get a hell of a show. Bobby, I'm assuming it's the first time you'd seen this. What do you make of it, mate?
It was awesome. The thing that really stuck out to me is like 30 or 35 minutes or whatever. They keep this just incredible pace the whole time. Like they don't slow down. It just, move after move, and everything made sense. Everything kind of fit. And like, I liked how kind of early on Motor City Machine Guns kind of got like the old school heel thing going. And then just from there, it just kept going and going. I didn't know who won, so I thought, the air raid crash, like at the very end, was going to be it. When he kicked out at 2.9, I kind of freaked out a little bit. And just excellent stuff, man. Great way to start this.
Man, they were slick. They still are. But Saban and Shelley, that initial stint they had where they were really running wild with the tandem offense, they were putting all sorts of shit together. The sequences on display here are something else. Oracle. The Mercy Machine Guns do not strike me as a traditional Oracle team. But there was a lot to like here, I'm sure, right, Oracle?
Oh yeah, this was a real good match. Honestly, the thing that kind of stood out to me the most was just, we've kind of scratched the surface a little bit on it briefly, but just how different Jay and Mark look, even in 2007. I mean, of course, that was a fucking 16 years ago now, but still, I mean, it's just.
I'm with you though. Yeah, I agree. You almost didn't notice it as it happened, right? It's weird.
Yeah. It's just like. It was a slow transformation into what they had become in the last couple of years. But this was good. It wasn't obviously what I would call my style of match, but they it just goes to show that like Mark and Jay could just kind of work any type of style, whether it's modern or old school, or they could kind of put that blend in. Just insane, and the double team offense really in a lot of their matches is just nuts, not just from them, but the ring positioning, the way they set it up, and even in a match where they work like a sort of a really fast paced kind of spot in some ways, they still set it up believably. They still do it in a way that's not like grading or like okay, this is silly. I mean, it's actually really impressive because, especially when you got 4 guys in there trying to set stuff up, it's like, damn, man. I don't know. It's watching like this is the match where it kind of stood out the most was just the sequences they could throw together, without getting.
They still feel kind of grounded, right? By reality, yeah.
Right.
I agree.
Exactly.
Absolutely, I agree. Alex, what did you make of this one, mate?
Kind of not disappointed, not surprised. Kind of surprised. Yeah, no, surprised is the right word. That Oracle, we aren't on the same board about this. This is a masterpiece. I think this is as good as any match we've done on here. This is like, okay. So also, there could be a heavy sense of nostalgia because I truly view this match as the end of the golden era of what I refer to like the golden era of independent wrestling. That you could like say like mid 02. It just kind of after this show, you know, this was from the show that Colt Cabana was leaving and going to WWE. Punk was already gone. Joe was in TNA. You know, AJ and those guys were in TNA. So it really seemed like that first class of the big ROH stars was gone. And shortly after this is when ROH got on traditional pay-per-view and like their footage was becoming a little bit more accessible. So it didn't have that exclusivity and like the secret club feel that much anymore. It's this match. And I think it was like a couple weeks or before or after this, Eddie Kingston and Chris Hero had their legendary loser leaves CZW match, which ended with both of them leaving because of fucking Zandig. But you know, I always kind of view that whichever match is last. I think it's this one, but I view it as kind of the bookend. I'm sure I could find like I could say like Amazing Red versus Low Key, and then this, or kind of like that's where I bookend like the golden age of independent wrestling. But I hold it in high regard for that. And also I remember my buddies in college, Sam and JP, were huge Briscoes and Machine Guns fans. And I ordered this DVD, and when I got it in that day, I went over to their house. I'm like, they wrestled each other. These were guys that, you know, we would get a 30-pack of Keystone and stay up all night playing No Mercy. And we had like carefully crafted and articulated both Jay and Mark Briscoe in the game. They were our tag champs. And, you know, we did their whole moveset, all that shit. But this is like, I think I could hype it up a bit more than necessary because of that nostalgia and affinity I have for it. But like, first thing rewatching it, I miss the bad guy tag teams that cower into each other's arms. I fear that like modern audiences may try to take that in a weird direction, but that always worked. Like the bad guy that was scared and then ran into his teammates' arms, that type of thing. I thought that was always money. Oracle talked up the Briscoes tag offense. One thing I always remember from the first time I saw them do it, the thing they would do with the Irish whip, the double 3-point stance, and then bark like dogs, and then do the double shoulder block. I always thought that was fucking fantastic as well. And I forgot that part of Jay's repertoire for a while was a military press. I kind of marked out when he picked up Shelley for that. But I mean, the guns became what Oracle and I agree upon is like not good. Like their TNA, because basically that's all TNA saw them as. It's like, hey, go out there and do a bunch of that shit that doesn't make any sense for 10 minutes. And but I mean, anyone who knows what they're talking about knows that Alex Shelley was an unreal talent, and Chris Sabin was really good too. Shelley's great. That was the last year's Bolo when I watched it. I was like, dude, this guy's still fucking money. But this is just a legendary match, and I love how it's built around the uncertainty of, you know, because Mark had a concussion going into it, and if he could still do the shooting star press, and then he does, and like legitimately, this movie has a movie. It's cinema, brother. This match has like a shoot 8-minute finish. Like it's wild, and the whole point is you can do that, and it can be great if you leave it in capable hands, which is I think a lot of what modern criticism sparks from is some guys these days aren't equipped to do shit like this and try to, and it comes across as kind of sloppy. These 4 guys could pull it off. I have nothing but the highest of praise for this match.
It was the right crowd for that too, right? Which is always an important part of it. I mean,
Chicago Fieldhouse, baby.
They were rocking, man. It was special. I love the you know, Mercy Machine Guns are the heels here. I know that's not like a sort of firm line so much, but they are the heels.
Well, that was established when they came out to 311.
There you go. I loved the kind of the structural thing they did there with Sabin making sort of like a de facto hot tag, but immediately being such a dick that he maintained his heat while doing it. Like he did his like hot tag with the moves, but he was such an asshole about it that he never became anything but the heel. You know, that was tremendous.
One of the most like sarcastic like comedy spots I've ever seen is in this match, where I think it's Mark has Sabin in an arm ringer, and Sabin does the Ultimo Dragon thing where he flips over, kips up, and comes back, and then pokes him in the eye.
It's tremendous, absolutely tremendous. It did pop me how much response the reverse Rana got in 07 because, like, you know, it happens in every
That's an arm
segment.
drag now.
Yeah, it happens so often. It's, to be fair, it's such a like insane move that it still gets a decent reaction. In 07, it was like, my God, people were like jumping up and down, and she was beautiful. The shooting star deal that you called out was incredible amount of added some real drama to the match, I thought. But the biggest compliment I can give to the match, honestly, is that, you know, the people are watching it as sort of an exhibition at first. It's this, you know, it's two great teams having a great match, and I don't think they really buy a title change. And by the end of it, they go so far with that long finish you were talking about, Alex, that it honestly, the people almost can't fathom the Guns aren't going to win it. You know, like, there's a couple near falls at the end where they're like, everyone's on their feet waiting for the title change, and they come so close and they don't quite give it to them. And it's just, they did a wonderful job of convincing the people that there was going to be a title change. In a scenario where I think most of the audience was smart enough to know, probably not, right? For the reasons we kind of touched on earlier. So it's a fabulous match. It really, really is. And I think it's definitely sort of a snapshot of the time in a way that I didn't really consider before you kind of laid it out. But with the way you contextualized it, I think in some ways it's sort of like a closing window in that regard, right? Like it's sort of a Ring of Honor's on its way to changing dramatically, especially in the coming years. But yes, it's an interesting time. And that whole stretch of shows is interesting to look back on, say the least. So, hell of a time, though. A hell of a time. All right. There you go, folks. Mostly Machine Guns, first match. I think we all recommend it. It's differing levels, but I think we all recommend it. It's fucking awesome. All right, we move now. Same year, we moved to August 10th for one of the most insane matches in Ring of Honor history. An unbelievable spectacle. Just a collection of violence here. We have the Boston Street Fight, the Briscoes up against Steen and Generico. It's been said a lot, especially with the news recently. I know Sammy and Kevin both talked on it, right? Like how much this feud did for them and how much it changed their careers. And I think that was already known, but it was cool to see them kind of speak on it. This is the match that I always think of when I think of that rivalry. I am aware the Ladder War is probably their most famous match, right? But good Lord, man, this match is fucking insane. It's like singular to me in style in a lot of ways. Oracle, this ain't so much about that sequence tandem offense, bro. There's a whole lot of violence on display here, isn't there?
Oh yeah, this rules. There's just a lot of craziness and the video that I found on this, you know, give me back my bullets, which, you know,
factual.
Big fist pump there. Yeah, this, and it just starts, you know, with a bang right away, and they're just they brawl all over the place, man. All over the building, all over ringside, in the ring, out of the ring, everywhere. Total fucking nuttiness. The spot that keeps sticking out in my head is when I honestly can't remember whether it was Mark or Jay, but one of them threw Steen inside a trash can and just pushed it over. And like I don't know, it was just like that seems like a silly standard spot you'd I don't know, but it worked just in the context of the craziness.
Mm-hmm.
Just like shoving him in there and just like nonchalantly pushing it over. I love that they all sort of, you know, or at least seemingly dressed for, you know,
yep,
you know, basically seemingly dressed for a street fight. Excuse me. There's weird things going on next door. Sorry. Yeah, this was a totally insane match. It might have gone a tad too long. But just they kept, you know, the crowd into it the whole time. And just, I mean, you'd get a guy like flying over, doing some crazy shit over the guardrail, or some crazy madness. Just a great chaotic brawl.
Certainly, it's it truly feels as though, and I think this is not a case of it feeling this way, I think this is where it was, but it truly feels as though like they're just coming up with insane plans as they go, right? It never feels like they're kind of, we have to stop to set up this thing. It just flows in a way, and Joe literally just made the comparison in the chat. It flows in a way that I can only compare in recent times to Anarchy in the Arena, where it's like, it's definitely set up in a way where it works. It isn't just a mess, but it walks that line just about perfectly, where it feels completely organic. Everything feels like it's unfolding in front of your eyes, rather than being some sort of set piece that was prepared that afternoon. It does a remarkable job of that. It is also just simply hellacious. I mean, some of the violence here is outrageous. There are some disgusting sounds in this match, and it ain't just the chair shots. Some of the headbutts. It's just brutal. Bobby, what did you make of this one?
Yeah, it was awesome. I love the announcers leaving like a minute in, just the crowd making a whole bunch of noise for the whole thing. I think that really added to it. Just throwing chairs at each other, doing a whole bunch of moves onto the chairs. I know there was a Michinoku driver on like the floor, which was incredible. I watched the ladder match a couple weeks ago, and I didn't watch this one because I knew we were doing it for this. And just an incredible pair of matches, man. And it's violent, but like everything also kind of makes sense. It's not just violent to be violent, which I appreciated. It's great stuff.
It says something about a match when it's like noteworthy when things get back, inside the rail. It says something about the first half of the match being. Alex, what did you make of this one on revisit, mate?
Was Anarchy in the Arena? Was that the Edge Randy Orton match at the PC WrestleMania?
Not quite. No, close, but not quite. Not quite.
Yeah. I mean, it's great. Because it's so stripped away now. Like hearing I know Tony buys some songs and whatnot, but that Bouncing Souls Olay song, hearing that to start it off, I just kind of got an unexpected kick from that. I love how Owens. I've been indoctrinated. Steen charges at him and gets the back body drop. And man, it's not just his WWE run. I forgot. Fucking Owens loves that hockey collar spot where you grab and you do the windmill punches.
They were kicking the shit out of each other in that spot in this one, weren't they, too? Good Lord, man.
Yeah, they were going for it. All too often these days, people will be like, X is like ECW when it's not even close to that. This, you could say, was kind of like that because of like all this chaos going on in the crowd with no real regard for the fact that people are around them, but the people still knew enough to kind of, they want to be close to it, but give them their space. And then you got the guys like jumping up and down at stuff and then high-fiving their friends and shit. Nothing really drives me crazier these days in watching wrestling than when like wrestlers are brawling right next to them and then it just shows them smiling, like recording it with their phone. It's like, get in there, man. Tell them to kick their ass or some shit. Do something. And so I enjoyed that for all the craziness that's in this, all the crazy spots and all the guardrail and all that shit. There, 2 different times in the match, someone takes a vertical suplex onto the concrete or the hardwood or whatever it is. That's the type of shit that you can't walk the next day. Like, not a chair shot to the head. And speaking of which, I'm sorry if this offends. Chair shots to the head are fucking cool, and they need to come back. Like that. That's real wrestling, dude. Wrestling is something that we're being safe, without doing chair shots to the head. But we still have people wrestling in light tubes. We still the purpose of a move in independent wrestling is to figure out how to land on your head. So, like, if we're going to be doing all that, just chair shots to the head. There's that guy with the long hair in GCW that comes out to Pantera that like takes chair shots to the head. I don't know if he's good or not, but because of that, cool. Keep it going, dude.
And so if everybody pull out the dadgum razor blade, cut yourself, man.
Dude,
everywhere, not just instead of taking
from the Briscoes here,
spot on your fucking neck, why don't you just get out that razor blade, take you a fucking aspirin, and slice yourself open, man. That's I mean, I'm being, I know I'm sounding sarcastic, but I'm serious. Like, that's way safer than fucking breaking your neck and having your neck fucking severed from your body like you're fucking Misawa.
Yeah, decapitated internally for the love of the business, brother. And when I worked, like, when I was in college, I worked backstage at a few shows, and one of them, I saw guys like taking 6 or 7 aspirin, and they were drinking like beer and like liquor and shit. And I did like the young kid. I was like, "What are they doing?" And someone's like, "Oh, that thins their blood, so when they blade later, it runs." And I was like, "Oh," and sure enough, those 2 motherfuckers poured hot. And yeah, you're exactly right. This fuck your reverse Ron is take a share shot to the head like a grown man. The ROH guardrails offered something so cool because it brought the interactivity of the fans and whatnot. But then anytime someone got Irish whipped into it, or even like in this match when they lay it horizontally and take bumps onto it, the noise it makes is disgusting. And like the Irish whips when the sign would bend around the guys. I mean, Joe, what was his name? Little known chap, Samoa Joe. He would wrestle and a solid hand when he would do his gimmick where he ran and he did like a boot or something on the outside, and the way the steel would bend around it made it look so just devastating. And I'm kind of surprised. You would think that's something Tony Khan would figure out a way to incorporate, but yeah, this match just becomes chaos. I'm looking over my notes here and it's all just like LOLs, chaos, all caps, that type of thing. Oh yeah, I did pop huge. This is 2007, and Steen was still using Drowning Pool for his entrance theme at the end of the match when they played "Tear Away," which was the theme song for WrestleMania 5 years before.
I'm tearing away,
and yeah, it wasn't even cool then. That's the most peak Vince thing ever. He got Drowning Pool when they weren't cool anymore. So I mean, I will always give. Like I add a star if it's a street fight and the guys show up in jeans and a t-shirt. That's immediate. You bump up the rating. And yeah, these guys had good matches. And I always forget that Steen and Generico came in to Ring of Honor after kind of what I dubbed, the golden era, because they were doing so much in CZW and PWG. They were still like a very present force at that time. These matches, you could make a very real case that like their stock would not have been as high had it not been for the series they had with the Briscoes.
Absolutely. I think both guys have kind of made that case too. So, I think kind of that speaks to that element of it. It's definitely not a match to kind of talk about the details of per se, because it's just insanity. It really is.
Joe, can I do my my indie nerd gimmick for just a second here?
Please do. Yes.
Bob, do you know how Steen and Generico got their first bookings in the United States, or for CZW at least?
I don't.
For Tournament of Death 3, there was a wrestler named Sexy Eddie, who was in the opening round, and he was this guy they flew in from Canada for it. He works at IWS, I think the name of the promotion was. And in the match, he landed on a light tube, and it went through his, like, right below his wrist, and it slit whatever the main artery is there. And it's, like, squirting out like a water fountain. And after the match, he would make a fist, and it would make it squirt harder, and he was, like, doing it on his face and on his tongue and whatnot. And the story is Zandig was like, "You crazy motherfucker, I need more people from your promotion." And that's how Steen and Generico got their first booking in CZW. So, had it not been for this guy getting his wrist slit in a CZW match in a field somewhere, then we may not have some strong main eventers in the World Wrestling Federation these days.
We should have a segment on one of our shows called Knock Knock Alex, and he gives us like indie nerd.
Yeah. But it's always just Bob on the screen, just like nodding along, like, all right.
Oh, no way.
What about when Kevin was selling and started just like saying, "I want my mum. Where's my mum?" Did you guys hear that? That's tremendous. I must say, it is apparently like he's obviously not exactly the same. It is striking to me how unchanged Kevin Owens' in-ring style is in a lot. Like there is because the Briscoes, I think you saw here, like there is an evolution to their style, right? Unquestionably. And there is one to Kevin. I'm not saying he's the exact same wrestler because for a range of reasons he's changed up. But like if you just outlined it, there is so much overlap, and he's doing it now in fucking Alamodome. It's like he's a preposterous story, man. He'd be a good episode of this one day.
I remember when he had that match with John Cena in Corpus Christi. I forget what pay-per-view it was, but I was there, and he won. And then at his promo at his .com promo afterwards, he like made a point to call out Jim Cornette and how like he proved him wrong. And I remember at the time being like, dude, who fucking cares? But then it's like Cornette always told him what he was doing wasn't going to work. And Cornette has some things he can sometimes be right about. More often than not, he's kind of wrong with the modern shit. But like, I get it now. Like he told him this wasn't going to work, and he's like, I just kept doing the same shit, and I beat John Cena, and I just main evented a pay-per-view in the fucking Alamo Dome. So yeah, like, talk your shit, Kevin Owens.
Cornette always does he always does that thing where he's like, I was right. He got himself in better shape and got better gear, and it's like, bro, come on, bro. He got KO put on his shorts. He's exactly the same guy. Let's not pretend. Like, I mean, he did get in better shape and good for him, but come on, it's Kevin Steen. It's the same dude. He's just a great pro wrestler, man. It's that simple. Tremendous. I did like after they did something to Kevin on the chairs, and then when they got they did something to Jericho when they flipped him up in the air and he went down the chair. And then they got Kevin, and Mark said, "Big boy's turn," which is fucking awesome. There's so many little quirks like throughout these matches, but yeah, there's an awful lot of chaos here. I mean, it's best to be watched rather than us describe it. It's an unbelievable spectacle. It's one of those things you just have to see it to believe it. Tremendous match. Alex, I know you've kind of informed us earlier. You had a list, so at this point in the program, I'll send it to you. Other matches from this kind of first decade of the Briscoes as a team that you would recommend? I've got a few noted down here, but go ahead, Alex.
So as a team from the first decade, the Generation Next show, Generation Next wrestles the Briscoes, Jimmy Rave, and John Waters in an 8-man tag. That's fantastic. Any match they have with Jack Evans, because they beat that dude up like no one else beat that dude up. It was fantastic. One of the first ROH shows when they were still working that gym in Philly, they wrestled AJ Styles in Amazing Red, which has one of the greatest tag finishes ever. They wrestled Samoa Joe and AJ Styles. They wrestled CM Punk and Colt Cabana in Chicago, the Second City Saints, which is a fantastic tag match. Joe and Homicide, they wrestled the Kings of Wrestling. The Rottweilers being Low Key and Homicide. Even the match they had last year, WrestleMania weekend at WrestleCon Super Show, was fun. One match of theirs from the first decade that I have never seen, which surprises me, and I've always tried to track it down and unsuccessful. They wrestled Homicide and Hernandez. They wrestled LAX, and I've never been able to track that match down.
Well, that's interesting. What promotion was that?
Ring of Honor got LAX for one weekend.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, and they wrestled Steen and Generico one night and the Briscoes the other night.
Yeah, I completely forgot because Hernandez in that spot seems weird. They were a hell of a team. That'd be fun. Yeah, that's an interesting one.
TMDK, World's Greatest Tag Team, Glory by Honor 5, Night 1. They wrestled Kenta and Marufuji, which was really good.
Yes.
There's a match they had in CZW against the Backseat Boys, which is not like the greatest match you'll ever see, but it's definitely like a novelty of two really influential tag teams from their era, like wrestling in their youth. And then I think what I would put down here as like the hidden gem of the Briscoes run for me is somewhere around 06, 07. They had a pair of matches in FIP with the Necro Butcher and Madman Pondo that were just bell to bell insanity. The first one was like pitched as like the wrestling match, but it still just devolves to crowd brawling and chair shots and shit. And then the second one, they do like light tubes and all. Jay jumps off the back of like the ring truck, and it's I don't know if Joe, you ever watching that old FIP? They were all pitched as like family friendly shows.
Yes.
And like these guys are just going coast to coast and bleeding all over the place, and the kids in the front row are like, yeah.
Wasn't that the same promotion where Punk and Homicide brawled into a strip club?
That was like when it started, and those were the shows that Gabe was doing down there with like the Ring of Honor roster that was drawing like 25 people.
Yeah, he had to change because that was the idea. Was like that was a different audience, and he booked accordingly, and it was like more kind of old school graps, like sort of family wrestling was sort of the idea. Yeah, I haven't seen enough of it to know how accurate that is, but that's how Gabe always described it. So
yeah. But yeah, if you haven't, I cannot recommend enough tracking down the Briscoe boys against Necro and Madman Pondo. It's as chaotic as you would imagine.
That covers a lot of them. I think the Marufuji Sugiura match has got to be noted. Looking else what you haven't covered. There's a tag with Davey and Seidel. I haven't got the show wrote down in front of me. That's fucking awesome. The Kings of Wrestling stuff falls into this decade. A lot of that stuff's good. There's a street fight that's a real hoot. I think we've covered most of it with that 25 match listing that we just offered. You you pretty much nailed it, though, bro. I mean, there's a lot there, but I think that's just about most of it. There's a couple in the chat too that I like this one a lot. With Aries and Strong Unified. What was another one? Claudio and Seidel is awesome too.
Yes.
That's another one that kind of falls through the cracks because they were not like a team, you know.
All Pro Joe, DM me that link if you have it.
There you go. Real raps, folks.
And since we'll probably be talking about some strong J singles matches here before too long, here in this first decade, Mark had a good singles program with Homicide. And if you've never seen it, the Survival of the Fittest match from 2004, which was Joe, Homicide, Mark, Cabana, Austin Aries, and Brian is like, I mean, it's like an hour long because it's elimination, but it is just fantastic piece of business. If you're one of those people that doesn't know why some people still talk about Austin Aries as a great wrestler, that's one to check out.
Take that, Bob. There you go. All right. We now move to Act 2. Now, again, this is just two of the many singles matches between Mark and Jay. And I think in different ways, both of them kind of encapsulate who these guys were as singles wrestlers. Let's just jump right into this, fellas. June 25th, 2005. I believe this is like 2 weeks after Necro and Joe, right? I believe that's roughly right.
Alex, do you know what the name of the show is?
No, I do not.
It was HCW, which I don't know what that stands for. The name of the show was Mandatory Suicide, which I think is a Slayer song, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I mean, the match kind of was fitting, I sense, in that regard. Alex, you do not make many requests as being part of this program, but this was one of them. You said that this must be included. I worked diligently to do so. This is an experience, brother. I mean, I'd seen this before, but I'd mostly seen it in like the inevitable Twitter clips that appear every 6 months when someone finds it. And it's like, what the fuck happened here? So it's been a while, if ever, I'd actually sat down and watched this in full, whatever the fuck that means for a match like this. Good Lord, Alex, I'll let you take this one away because, you know, we'll kind of fill in the gaps afterwards, but this was you requested it, brother. Here it is.
Yeah, this is, whenever talking about the Briscoes, you have to talk about this. So if I knew at any point in time, I've forgotten why the Briscoes were in that year-long sabbatical from Ring of Honor, but this was during that time because they left somewhere into 2004 and then came back kind of towards the end of the CZW feud, so they didn't really get tied up in that at all. And I don't remember why, but I remember this match happens, and this match is an urban legend in many aspects of like what happened. There's people that say like they wanted to fight but didn't want to like do it like in a way that the law would get involved, and so they did it this way, like about a girl or some shit. And then there's the other, like the show was just down the road from where they lived and they got drunk and then asked the promoter to put them on it. I mean, I'm not one to judge. As you can see, I'm enjoying a libation right now. When Jay comes out and hits the ropes, you can tell he's not necessarily in a sober state.
100%. Yeah.
So I don't know what the whole story is, and to me, that kind of makes it even more like mythical. And this is like, if this happened at a Ring of Honor show, like during that time, or maybe even CZW, because CZW still has some matches that broke into that next level, people would regard this as like one of the finest piece of businesses ever. But instead, it's at a flea market with literally less than 20 people watching that don't know how to react to what they're seeing.
Yep.
And the ring is, you know, I don't know who was on the ring crew for that, but there's no mats. It's literal gravel outside of the ring. Like there's someone's house, like a shoot house in the background. And, you know, there's trees, and it's not even the DJ Hyde's parents' ranch where they have Tournament of Death. Like that at least has some charm to it. This is just like, what the fuck is happening? And then the match starts with the most ferocious collar and elbow tie-up you will ever see this side of Antonio Inoki and Jack Briscoe. And then they don't even do chops. They basically just hit each other as hard as they can with an open palm. And then, you know, they go to the outside and chair shots abound. And they're not swinging them like you swing, you know, they're not swinging them like Balls Mahoney swung a chair. And there's plastic ones that have the fucking steel poles on the side, and they're like sidewinding them. And Mark gets immediate hardway color after doing this reckless bag of elbows and knees shooting star press to the outside. And it's just like constant violence. And talk about the inebriation. There's a point where like after the chair shots in the head, Mark just goes, "Whoo!" and like starts walking it off. And eventually there's a part where they're going to do the vertical suplex on the outside, and it really seems like halfway through it, Jay changed his mind. So Mark like shoot vertical suplexes him on the outside onto this gravel, and they get back in the ring and they do more chair shots, and it just doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like it's so fun. It's not. I would not call it a match because there's really no story. It's just two dudes beating the fuck out of each other, and like I said, for the reasons of really not knowing the motivation behind it. And the commentators don't really know what to do, and the crowd has no idea how to react to it. And then the best part, the coup de grace, the coup de grace, as Dusty Rhodes would say, in the most like backwoods mud show ever, the fucking guy keeps getting on the PA going, "Let's hear it for these two, ladies and gentlemen." He's like, "Oh, they're really going for it. Let's give it up for them." It's literally like there's less than 24 people there. And back when this happened, news didn't travel as like immediate as it does now. And with like phones were a lot different then. I've always said, like, when I read about Joe Kobashi, the way I read about it was a guy who was there, called his friend on a payphone and told him it was the greatest match ever. And then that guy posted it on the forums. He's like, "I just talked to my friend." So this didn't really, until the DVD came out, people didn't really know it happened. And like, they're on the cover of the DVD. And then so like there was this slow trickle months after the fact of like, did anyone know that the Briscoes wrestled each other on this show? And then people actually started watching the match, and it's insane. And it's like I said, like you can't really, for me, I couldn't do them justice without at least bringing this match up. And it's been 17 years now, and I still can't make any more sense of it.
It's absolutely ridiculous. It's one of the most ridiculous things in wrestling history. Ridiculous it's not even the suitable word because it's incredibly violent also. After one of the chair shots, and there's some blood and there's like a big cut on, I believe, in this particular occasion, it's Mark's head, I believe. And the camera like just fucking zooms in and you see this big gash. It's like, it's unlike any, there's no real comparison for this, I don't think. Like it's because again, as you said, it's not, match is even the wrong term for it, right? This is just footage. I don't know how you term this. It's just a thing that existed at some point. We still have footage of it. Make of it what you will. It's nothing if not entertaining. There's some running commentary. The one you mentioned about where Jason was having a headache, and early on they do like a little bit of like wrestling, and Mark fucking gets the hold, and he goes, "Let's slow it down. This mat's slippery." It's just fucking. There's so much going on here, Bobby. If we've never seen anything like this, I sense you're in the same boat. What did you make of it?
Yeah, it ruled, man. From when it started, it's like, okay, they're outside. There's just fucking like gravel out there. And then, they just come in, start beating the shit out of each other. And yeah, the chairs, like Alex said, like those aren't like gimmick chairs, and they're just there for the fans. And yeah, they got the steel beams on them and all that. And just some of the stuff they were doing for, like you said, 20 people or whatever, just to do it. It's incredible, man.
Yeah, it's fittingly is one of one. This one, Oracle. What did you make of this?
This fucking ruled. Like it was already awesome. Like when it just shows up, and like Jay, who the fuck was this guy that came out with Jay in the ring?
I don't know. I didn't know.
Fucking random dude. I'm not in the fucking ring with him.
He quickly wanted none of it. And that's the other thing too. The referee wanted nothing to do with the match. Like the refs just like, yeah, whatever, do what you want.
And so then Mark comes out or whatever, and they're like, they look like two wrestling fans that, well, I mean, these guys were like obviously a little bit tougher than. Well, okay, let me amend this. Down south, there's some wrestling fans that were like legitimately look like some crazy motherfuckers down here. When I went to shows, they look like two guys who would get in a fight after the show over like, which one is like, the bait, like which one's the baby daddy or whatever, and like that's literally what they were dressed like. And so they get in here and they do this crazy collar and elbow. and they start, swapping, fucking crazy overhand chops. And then at one point, Mark absolutely blasts Jay with a shoot forearm, and
Yes,
it
he
almost
does.
knocks Jay out. So Jay's like staggering down, and they immediately go into like holds and shit, and you can tell Jay's about to collapse and like fall over from the forearm. It's like a fucking, and like Mark's trying to give him like just like half-assed arm wringer, and it's incredible. And of course, they go out to the gravel. Mark hits the ridiculous springboard shooting star, whatever the fuck. I mean, just totally stupid.
That was insane. That was maybe the craziest part of all of this.
Then the chair stuff starts, okay, and this is where it gets great because I mean it's already been great at this point. I don't like no selling in wrestling, in like the general sense, but it's always fucking badass and awesome when you're no selling actual violence. That fucking rules like every time, like actual violence. When you like, it's like when like wrestlers, of course, the chair shots don't compare, and even in this context, it's like when like Kingo Kimura or like whoever, like in 80s New Japan or 90s New Japan, when like someone would like swing a chair and hit Fujiwara unprotected in the head, and he would no sell it and just laugh,
like Awesome and Tanaka.
Yeah, exactly. And Mark gets literally creamed like 7 times in the head with his chair, gets his head split open, and he gets up and he's like, he's got this giant gash and he's just, gushing blood everywhere. And he gets up and he kind of like, he almost forms like a smile at one point, and it's like wandering around. And there are these like random fans at this flea market, okay? And as Alex pointed out, there's like less than 20 of them. And they're like sort of like nervously giggling and laughing at this because they don't really know how to react to, Mark Briscoe literally getting his head sliced open violently, by his brother. And
little kids running around in the background.
Yes. And they both, they both get like the chairs, and they do like the dueling chairs, which is actually the most horrifying part of the match because you feel like at any point, like this sort of like chair war that they're having could go like really badly, even worse than like taking the chair shots that they've already, given to one another. Like
they're not gimmick swinging them; they're like swinging to hurt each other.
Yeah,
yeah. And so like, I don't know. It feels like like one of the metal parts is gonna break and like, take out Mark's eye or something. So it's just
Final Destination, a fan.
Yeah. But this was and of course to go back in the ring and just continue with the chair shots, and then like my favorite part is Jay goes over because I guess he's the older brother. I don't know. I guess
he's the adult in the room, brother.
The one and only pinfall attempt of the match is the ending.
But yeah, this was incredible. I don't know if this was just like them like getting mad at each other, and then like, of course, as we talked, we don't know what the whole context of it is, but my hope is that they just got like drunk and were like kind of mad at each other. So let's just fucking fight and do it in the context of a match. So they just went out there and did it. But yeah, this was incredible stuff, man. This is if you ever think it's cool to no sell, this is how you no sell in wrestling. You just get in a fight with somebody and then get your head split open and just wander around sort of drunkenly and kind of laugh it off. That's how you no sell.
I think the best way to explain this match is that there is not a single backstory you could give me that would make this like a logical thing to do, which is the only way to explain the match, right? Like Alex laid out like 2 sort of wrestling myth tales, those 2, and there's no other solution we could find that would make you watch this and be like, yeah, that's fair enough. This is fucking nuts, man. Absolutely insane. So, a singular wrestling experience right here. So we moved from that to a very different meeting between the brothers, right? Almost 2 years later, March 4th, 2007, we're in Liverpool. All great matches take place in England. I've often said that. Here, the Briscoes have been struggling as of late. Tough form in tag team competition. So they opt to toughen each other up here in Liverpool. This is, to me anyway, like a genuine classic. And I think this is the best singles match of Mark's career. Jay, it may well be there's a couple I put on this level, but I think this is an absolutely extraordinary match. Oracle, they put some time in here. This is a longer match and kind of an epic in a lot of ways, especially with the finish. What did you make of this one?
Oh, this was outstanding. Really great match. They did a really good job of kind of making it more of a kind of a technical, classic brother versus brother, into kind of big spots at the end type deal. Kind of a sort of evolution of, I know it's kind of a maybe kind of like a cliche comparison, kind of an evolution of like a Bret Owen type match,
Yeah.
or like much more akin to the WrestleMania 10 match, in terms of like working the technical match and then kind of escalating as time, as the match goes. And of course, Mark doesn't win this. They end up going to the double. I guess you call it like a double knockout draw or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, it was a way to get Mark, Jay to kind of put his brother over and as a legitimate singles wrestler, at least that's what I got of it. And because Jay had already had that, had already had a credible singles run, by that point. And yeah, this was just tremendous stuff, man. And honestly, my favorite part of the whole thing was the post match where they both do a really great job. They clearly were tired as fuck, but like they do a really good job of like selling like the exhaustion and being like knocked out.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because you get like the really good camera shot of both of them as they're like knocked out on the mat. Yeah, just a great match.
Tell a beautiful story here, right? Like, as you said, the kind of the element of escalation, and they start with trap wrestling, and Jay throws a couple like really rough strikes, like the side of Mark's face. And Mark kind of registers it, but he doesn't overstay it. He kind of reacts to it a little bit, and then as soon as he gets himself in position, he fucking slaps Jay across the face. And it's, there's a boot not far behind it to the back. It slowly escalates, and it ends up being like a shootout almost, right? It's just bombs away. Outstanding, just wonderful match. Bobby, what did you make of this one, mate?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. Like, they showed a little video before where they're just kind of going over how they're gonna kind of toughen each other up and all that. And I think the thing is, it managed to keep the violence and intensity that we saw from really all the other matches so far, but like, without the weapons and all that, they just kind of went out there and did that. And just such a simple story too, and just kind of being like, oh, they both know each other so well, they're gonna have to really fight for it. And I actually really like the double knockout finish here too.
There is an incredible degree of like timing on display here and execution. As much as we enjoyed the actual story, the way it's fucking executed from an offensive point of view, from a physical point of view, they are in sync here, aren't they? I mean, some of the snap on everything they do here.
Yeah.
They get the crowd like oohing and ahhing at the most simple things. They're just done so perfect.
Yeah, the crowd was great too.
Absolute English, bro. The Brit crowds were great over here. That's why all of the great matches. Or how many times have you heard Oracle say? He said, my top 100 matches, 87 of them took place in the United Kingdom. You should see his progress DVDs. Speaking of DVDs, Alex, what do you make of this?
One of my notes is actually, I did it thinking of you, Joe, said, this crowd's cheeky because they start the dueling let's go Briscoe chants. Was the 5th year festival, I was trying to remember, was this like, this was Samoa Joe's leaving the company, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And I remember following this in real time, being like, "Man, Ring of Honor's been around for 5 years, and this was however long ago it was." Anyway, really love that they have one entrance. I think that's great because there have been matches with tag partners before, where they get 2 entrances and it's the same song. So I just like that they came out together and, for the one purpose. Every time someone took a bump on this ring, it sounded like someone was shooting a gun. Like, I don't know what was going on with the ring. It was mic'd really weird, but that stood out. Excuse me. What else do we have here? Yeah, they do that shit. Like, these guys get off on the floor spots. There's a power slam on the floor that's revolting, and then a brain buster on the ramp they have there. That
brutal.
It looks so incredibly painful. And again, those are the type of things that, even then, not now, but like even then, that's always been in wrestling. The brain processes going through a table is way more painful than that, which that's the reason that, you'd limp the next day or can't get around that type of shit. Shelley did it in the tag match, but I do love the that counter to the J driller where it's the up heel kick to like the back of the head to kind of get out of it. I think that's really good. The thought was there, and it's an example of something that botch or like something not going to plan made something look so much cooler. Is that attempted Hurricane Rana at the end of it where he does the Hardy spot off the ref's back. I really like that. And then, I mean, the J driller is devastating. They do some really good working punches there at the end. It's they always had good matches together. I talked about the CZW match at Best of the Best. There's this. Jay defended the title against Mark when he had it, and they had that match in Boston in the original Ring of Honor run. And I mean, this is good just because it's polished, and also there's a certain level of like prestige isn't the word I'm looking for, but it was just a good showcase, like for the show that it was on, where it was happening, that type of thing. Did you know that they were? Do you remember, Joe, before the Democratic hoax broke out, that Ring of Honor was going to run that past versus present show?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
I think the main event of it was going to be Jay versus Mark again, and so they had that book to go.
I think they did that I think they did it in the empty building because of that. I think.
I know they had another match during that empty building run. I was kidding, by the way. Anyone who's listening to this, COVID's real. I'm here with my friends, and they know I'm kidding. So
Alex likes to make Bob comfortable.
It's an example of like a good match to every once in a while circle back to because you knew it was always going to be great. I guess it's kind of. I think WWE got over reliant on that with Owens and Zayn, so I'm glad they haven't done that in a while because it seemed like every 2 months they were doing that. But that's another example. But like this, the independent scene every year, every 2 years, every once in a while we'd circle back to Jay and Mark having a singles match, and it was always a banger.
Absolutely. It feels like their most complete match, probably the best way to describe it, right? It's like it's had time, it has the crowd. So I also love how this match kind of encapsulates both guys as singles wrestlers, and the way they kind of had their unique styles. Mark is flashier, right? I mean, Jay would always do the big dive over the top and certainly had some flashy offense, but Mark is more sort of dynamic in that way. And he has the sort of colorful elements with the redneck kung fu and all that stuff. Jay, he's kind of mean streak is on display here, especially when he takes control of it.
Yeah.
The finishing stretch, it really feels like Mark is just merely surviving, and he hits one big bomb that flattens them both out, right? But like, there's a few near falls there where Mark's just hanging on for dear life. So, a lot to like here. I really do love this match, and that was a special. That 5-year festival was there's so much good wrestling across those shows. Also, a hilarious thing they did. God bless Ring of Honor. All right. Let's put a bow on the act.
I'm sorry if y'all talked about this. Was this the same show with Nigel and Brian, or was that a different night?
No, that was Unified. So that was 06, I think.
Okay. Sorry. Not to generalize the shows that happen on your side of the world.
Well, there's only one every 30 years in the big time promotion. So I'm pretty sure I'm right about that. Chat, tell me I'm wrong.
Well, in that case, much like the most recent one, your guy lost. So,
This is the main. That match is fucking awesome. Nigel Jr. That's a classic. That's a great
those
match.
Two had that Sheamus John Morrison chemistry where it's like it doesn't make sense that these guys are having matches as good as they do.
Absolutely. Okay. So for this act, we'll kind of throw out other singles matches for this to kind of put a bow on this act. I think we've already talked about Joe and Jay in the cage, which is incredible. Their match in 2015 is kind of hindered because Joe gets hurt early, but it's still fun for the novelty of it. I have to shout out, I think it's January 2011. Someone in the chat will have this. It might be 2010. Jay's title match with Roderick Strong, who we don't talk about a lot around here. He's fucking amazing. It's an NWA title match in Ring of Honor, 2011. That match is special. Jay gets juice and it's fucking It's a beautiful match. The title win against Steen is just an incredible moment that's worth seeing. And yeah, the many matches they have with each other. What other ones should we show up for singles work for both guys? Alex, anything?
I mean, if you haven't seen that Joe Cage match, we can't do it justice. It's like all the death matches you've ever seen. It's one of the most revolting. Like, there's a part where his blood starts clotting and he pulls away from the ring and it's clinging to it like venom, like the symbiote. It's horrifying. But I mentioned Mark and Homicide had a series of good singles matches. Yeah, you covered a good gamut there with Jay. I mean, he had the matches he had with Lethal for the belt were really solid, really good stuff. The match I mentioned with Davey is from 2013. The show was called Honor in the Heart of Texas. I don't know how the fuck their streaming service works, but if it's on there, please watch it. Jay Briscoe also. I did not know who Hangman Adam Page was until he had that feud with Jay Briscoe. And I was at the pay-per-view in Vegas the night before Connor and Diaz, where it was the fight without honor with Jay Briscoe and Adam Page. And that's when Briscoe, Page won.
That was big for Hangman. Yeah.
And back to my dad being a fan. My dad was there with me. And if you have the DVD or the pay-per-view, you can see my old man giving Page the finger after he won because he was so disgusted by what had happened. And then Jay, him and Adam Cole had some good matches, man. Like,
certainly, yeah.
Adam Cole's someone who kind of like this cycle of, is he good? Is this just a bit? Like with a lot of people. And the ladder match at Supercard of Honor 8, whichever one was WrestleMania 30 weekend, the finish got kind of botched, but that match was really good. They had the fight without honor at that awful venue for Final Battle.
Terminal 5, right?
Yeah. Who thought that was delirious, man? And then they had a really good match because Jay, remember, he made his own belt, and they had a match for that at State of the Art was the name of the show. It was another one in San Antonio. It was just like this random one-off that they did. It was good shit, man. And so, yeah, I mean, you can. I can't remember him, like I said, having a bad title defense. Some of them are obviously better than others, but I mean, both those guys. Please don't think of it as just a tag career because they both excelled in their own ways.
And again, I think it is, and I think I don't want to speak for him, but I think Mark would have no issue with this kind of conclusion. Jay, I mean, he will always be remembered alongside his brother because they're one of the great teams ever. But Jay was a remarkable singles wrestler. Like if there's a different timeline where Jay is on his own, he'd have made an awful lot of money in that arena too. Thank goodness he wasn't because we loved having them together for as long as we did. But Jay
no one ever questioned it either. No, like he could be in either position. No one questioned it.
No, he absolutely. And again, it's also worth noting while we're just kind of talking broadly here. Oracle brought this up earlier. The promo element of it. I mean, Jay's one of the best promos the last 20 years of wrestling. He's in that list. There's like a handful of guys I think that are on his level. He was an unbelievable promo, whether he had his brother next to him, whether he's talking about his brother, whatever it may be. Incredible promo. So that's both guys as singles wrestlers. We now move to Act 3. Now, this is saying that this is kind of has a fond place in my heart because this is where I had experienced it in real time, right? The second decade, if you look at Ring of Honor as like 20 years, just for the sake of conversation, the second decade is very different to the first, right? Sinclair ownership, a kind of identity crisis, their core fan base sort of losing interest in the product, it reaching a different fan base that was never the same. It just wasn't. And like different leadership, shaky times, so much going on. And this decade, for a range of reasons, has a lot less what you would call classic Briscoes tag matches. Part of that's because of the single stuff we were just talking about. Both guys had extended singles runs. Jay was the world champ twice. Mark was the television champion, I think in 2015, around that range. But a big difference in Ring of Honor was the product changed in every which way. And more specifically, this was no longer a quote-unquote DVD product, brother, right? This was no longer about let's all try to have the best match we can have so we can sell these DVDs. It was now a much more traditional television product. And for that reason, there was a lot less opportunity to just like maximize a match, right? Like you have 30 minutes going to have that match. And so this is a different pool of matches to pick from. So I picked two here I'm imagining. I know Bob, you saw the final battle match, but I'm imagining Alex and Oracle. You'd never seen either of these two, right? Because these are not like these sort of blockbuster events by any means. But I think, to me anyway, as a sentimental fan of both the promotion and this team, they represent kind of their role in the promotion, right? Because there's like a very particular vibe that is happening during the match and then changes when they kind of sort of transform the building and kind of take you back to those glory days on these two occasions. So let's get into it. Dragon Lee and Roosh, the first match were in July 26, 2019. So just quickly to kind of give a little backstory on my experience with this match. 2019 is like the least I've ever enjoyed wrestling, more specifically summer 2019. For those of you that not remember, this was the height of the wildcard rule, and for people like Bob telling us that we shouldn't care about it. Baron Corbin, Lacey Evans, Shane McMahon is the top heel. Alex, let me cook on this one. I understand. I understand the potential pushback on that. Let me cook. I didn't see this at the time, and then a couple of years later, a year or so later, wherever it was, someone suggested this match for My Match Monday show that used to do on Fightful, and I reviewed it, and I kept going back to it. Not because it's their best match, it certainly isn't. It's not even really a classic match, but there is something magical that happens in this match. Where
I'm sorry, finish your thought and then I'll ask.
No, I pretty much. This match changes the whole promotion for like 5 minutes before it returns to form. What was you going to ask, Alex?
I was going to ask what the date was on it.
July 26, 2019. That may be tape date or air date. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not 100% certain.
So,
these are dark times.
We should do our due diligence and kind of, for those that aren't aware, set the table of where Ring of Honor was at this point.
Absolutely. Yeah, so
yeah.
It's been a time. AEW's two shows into their existence, right? Maybe they did a second show before July 22. Bully Ray's booking regime has come and I believe maybe now gone. Maybe. The Madison Square Garden show is just gone, and that all came with that. But yeah, Alex, flesh it out more. But it's a very dark time.
For those of y'all who are listening that may not know it and have watched this match, they performed in front of a sold-out Madison Square Garden 4 months prior to this, and Cody, the Bucks, Kenny Omega came in, and basically Ring of Honor allowed them to use their company as a test platform for AEW. Supercard of Honor 12 in New Orleans, WrestleMania 34 weekend was basically the test run for what became All In, and All In, as we know, was the test run for what became AEW. And so as soon as that showed promise, those guys were out of there. And I'm not faulting them. Get paid, brother. And then Ring of Honor had sold out Madison Square Garden the previous fall, basically on the backs of Cody, the Bucks, Hangman and those guys. Well, Hangman was no, he wasn't. Anyway, Madison Square Garden was sold out with the idea that these guys who went on to AEW were going to be there. I mean, they still got Okada and shit, but then the Madison Square Garden show happened, and it's kind of fitting that Bob brought up the Hammerstein GCW show, because I think there's a lot of parallels between the ROH Madison Square Garden show and that GCW Hammerstein show, in the sense of, all right, here's your chance, make it happen, show them what you can do. And then they had the sniper set and they turned it around and went bang, that type of thing. So I went to a Ring of Honor show that summer. Okay, the biggest thing out, Matt Taven wins the world title. Next weekend, the house shows can't sell past the third row. That's what happens. And so the company's in a bad position, and I don't mean to put it all on Taven. It's that Madison Square Garden show was bad, and I forgot until you laid it out how fucking bleak the WWE product was in the summer of 2019 as well. So that was a rough time. And AEW had just started, so there was a lot of uncertainty, but I do remember specifically Ring of Honor was kind of left in the dust, and people just kind of assumed it was going to fade away.
And it's also worth knowing, like we talk about Madison Square Garden, Joe brings it up here. It wasn't just that they, missed this open goal. They were like clearly the issue of the show. like undeniably they were the problem. It was the worst fears of that relationship coming to reality and coming to fruition on the worst night it could happen. Like it all was timed. It was an absolute disaster for them. But you can see
they didn't
it,
know
man.
Okada was actually going to wrestle. You
can see it here. This is not, this is not like a classic Philly crowd by any means. This is 2300 arena, and it's a lot. It's very, very dark in there, more so than usual.
So I want to say all that to say I had no knowledge of this match, and I was flipping out watching it. So this was like a very welcome surprise.
It's everything I love about the Briscoes in that they're closing these tapings out, and the crowd are happy to see the Briscoes, and they're into the match, and they have this awesome start, and it's good. It's good throughout. Don't be wrong, but there is a point in the match when Mark gets back in and he's got color, and there is this like audible change, this audible response, this atmosphere shift, where it's like, oh my god, for the next 5 minutes, we're back in 2006. It's so special. And there's one particular moment where it's really captured, I think, where I think Mark hits a dive. It's when they do this point, he sets him up, the chair, he does a big dive over top, and the people start, smashing the barricade again. And Jay looks at the people with kind of nod as if to say, as long as we're here, you'll still be able to hit that fucking barricade. Like, as long as we're in there with guys who have a pulse, we'll give you something worth your time. It's not their best match, but God, it's a special match in that regard to me. I don't know. There's just something unique about this one because of where the promotion was at. Bobby, I'm sure a lot of that context kind of was somewhat lost because, it's hard to get all that just from watching this single match. But what did you make of this? Check it out nonetheless.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting that you kind of brought up the parallels because in a way, this match kind of feels like the first one we watched. Like, obviously, it's a lot shorter, but like they bring the intensity the whole time. It's just kind of balls to the wall, and it's this TV main event instead of that one was kind of this big epic, like you're talking about, to try and sell DVDs. But like for what it was incredible, and not a lot of people were talking about Ring of Honor in summer of 2019, and it's not a match that I would have really went out of my way to check out, and I'm glad we did because it's awesome.
Also worth noting, and we do this a lot, but he's not always most consistent in effort, but when fucking Roosh wants to be, that dude's unbelievable, isn't he? I mean, he's a special wrestler when he wants to be. He was pretty fucking special here, I thought. Oracle, what did you make of this one, mate?
Yeah, this was good. It's so weird to me. Like, I bring this up every time, but like watching Roosh matches is so weird because I watched him when he became a major star in Mexico, when he was first becoming big in Mexico.
You're one of the reasons I have such like a varied opinion on him, because I remember you, Oracle, talking about how he was like one of the best in the world, and then I saw him and I was like,
he was so damn good in Mexico. In 2012, 2013, he was so good. Really a great feud with Negro Casas, who jumped to AAA, by the way. That was fucking nuts about a week or so ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's always weird to see him like in like a totally different setting. And of course he was very good here. But it's just so weird to me. It's just kind of jarring. Yeah, this was awesome. Here, we're finally kind of getting the Briscoes of the last few years that we kind of recognize, at least in terms of character and presentation. You could tell just in this match how they've sort of morphed and developed into even better workers.
I think so. Yeah, I agree.
Just the way that they pace the match, the way they structure the match, the way they put things together. And sort of masterfully blend in sort of the high spot style with like pacing and Southern style and all that stuff. It's just really, really, really well put together. Yeah, this is excellent. And that final charging drop kick by Roosh in the end was incredible. Yeah. What a finish. Great match.
The element about their improvement, it reminded me of the quote that Joe had in his wonderful speech on the tribute show, was he said, I saw those guys go from crazy kids that would do anything to some of the best performers in the world. And I think that is like, you see that, right? You see the kind of, there was a great instincts were tremendous, don't wrong, but there's a great big, to me, there's a noticeable difference between the guys who were just fearless and what that allowed them as wrestlers to, I mean, these are complete pros here in 2019. I mean, this is more than ever before, I think, a timeless act that would have thrived at any point in any place because they could just do it all. There's no holes in their game here. There's a real professional kind of polish to their work. It's quite striking when you watch them in this way. But Alex, obviously, kind of as we spoke about earlier, you hadn't seen this before, and it's a time where not a lot of people have seen a lot of anything from Ring of Honor. But you said earlier you was having fun with it. What did you make of this one overall?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Dragon Lee, is that the guy? He's the guy that just got signed to NXT, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I always get confused with this Los Ingobernables family tree. Him and Rush are the brothers, right? Or Roosh, excuse me.
I think they're definitely brothers, yes. But I'm not. Isn't also a brother? God, I'm forgetting the brother's name. I think it's the third brother, right? Bob, what's the third brother's name? They're all brothers, aren't they? I don't know.
Andrade?
No, definitely not Andrade.
Okay.
Dralistico. Okay. My bad. I completely forgot whose name. But yes, they're all brothers. But nonetheless, yes, go ahead.
And
Alex.
so, like, these guys started Los Ingobernables, and then Naito took that concept to Japan for Los Ingobernables de Japón. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And was Andrade the leader or Roosh? Oracle, do you know?
I thought Andrade was it for a while.
I did too, but I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anyway.
Because they were the Ring of Honor sector of the faction was like La Faction in Ingobernables, right? And they had like Kenny King was in it.
Oh God.
Man, through multiple booking regimes, they would just not give up on Kenny King.
Okay, Roosh was the leader. Okay.
Roosh was the leader. Okay, thank you, Croaky.
And there's like, I don't know if y'all remember at the end of 2019 when people thought Ring of Honor was Dunsky and that Supercard of Honor 2020 was going to be the last show, and final battle in 2019 was Roosh and PCO in that like WWE style match with the hearse and everything. That was a strange time, man. But anyway, I guess Roosh has been one of those guys that a lot of what I've seen, I'm just like, so like Pentagon's the example I was making. I've seen what that motherfucker can do, and so I respect him so much for like not turning it on most of the time. And so people have told me that's what Roosh basically is. Like, he's good. He just saves when he needs to turn it on. I think his debut match in AEW against Moxley.
It was not his debut, but it was one of his early matches. He like tore it up, and then he got his contract and said, "Well, that's fun."
Because I remember I watched that match at the Bally's bar. I was in Vegas, and it takes place like 5 p.m. there. So I was just watching that, and I audibly popped when he, like, one of the first things that happens is he kicks out of the paradigm shift. I was just like, good man. But this is like, it's going from what we've talked about so far to this, where it's the Ring of Honor, but this match is going to be on TV, because obviously that Machine Guns match is just like you're saying. This is a DVD audience, brother. 30 minutes, do whatever you want. This is like, all right, we have to make this work for TV. So I just love that they go at it right away, and like the roles are kind of loosey goosey about who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, that type of thing, and like the offense they both get on each other is fantastic. Like they're both good teams, and that's something that the Briscoes always have fantastic tag offense, and that it's a weird thing to say that, like, a weird thing to quantify of being a tag team that's good wrestling tag matches against tags, and then also wrestling tags against 2 singles wrestlers. There's always a real divide between that. But with this one here, where are my notes at? Mark, just appears and has the proverbial crimson mask on, and it's just, I love how Roosh incorporates that, doing like the smearing on his chest like Brock, and then they do the Backseat Boys combo where he drop kicks Mark in the face, and he like hits him so his blood's on his boots, and so the next few steps it's like GTA 3 style, like the blood's on the blood prints are on the mat afterwards. It's fantastic. it's like people forget that TV matches can be awesome. Like everyone just thinks that TV matches. I'm sorry. People think they just exist to like be TV matches. Okay, now we get to this spot where the commercial is going to be, and then we come back, and then I have you in this hold facing the camera, that type of thing. You can still do these fucking crazy sprints like this if you want to. Case in point, Samoa Joe and Darby Allin, that type of thing. And so something like this, it's refreshing to watch teams that or wrestlers that are capable of these long form style of matches, condense it into just this momentary chaos. And yeah, this, out of all of them, I didn't see, I'd seen the first 4 matches before, had not seen this last 2. I was kind of losing my mind during this. And then at the end where the Dragon Lee, I can't remember which one, the Rana, that's fucking insane. Fantastic stuff.
He's pretty spectacular. I'm kind of bullish on, assuming the current regime creatively stays as is. I think he may have a shot, actually. He's pretty spectacular, Dragon Lee, so hopefully it works out for him. All right, we jumped out last match here. Hopefully there's not an argument ahead. December 11th, 2021. Final battle, which at the time appeared very likely to be the actual final battle. Lest we forget that this show was advertised as End of an Era, which was the polite way of saying, we may never be back. Please watch this one. There's so many memories of this time for me, and Bob's part of us doing the Honor Hour show and Bob killing Ring of Honor. I remember I always would watch Final Battle every year. I have to watch Final Battle, and I remember this one. My brother stand up for it because it was the last one allegedly, and a friend coming over. And the way I sold my friend of mine on the show was sending the Briscoes promo, and I tweeted a clip of it earlier on our late night grin. But the one where he's like for the last 20 years we've been winning them, losing them. like yeah, man, that's it. That's what they did with these belts. They were the tag team champions forever and ever, and you knew they were going to close the promotion out that way. This was the end. There's a lot of emotions here for me. Like, I think if the family been at ringside, which has an even different context now, but was always like a really striking visual, them all together that way. Kerry Silken on commentary, telling everyone that he loves them and thanking them. Because I don't know, man. Like, it's easy to forget now because they're just a thing in AEW that it seemed like it was over. It really did. It felt that way.
It is. It's what we knew of it is.
Sure. End of an era proved to be the fitting term for it. Right? That was the right way to describe it. But it's just interesting. And look, I know we all have fun with the Kingdom, and I was certainly not a fan, especially in the mid 2010s. But I think Bennett has become a really rock solid pro wrestler since he left the WWE, and he seems in a really good place. And he seems to be in a place where he can focus on what he does well. I think he's really good in this match. And look, if nothing else, Taven's world title run lives in infamy, right or wrong. But those dudes were not going to have a bad match in the last show Ring of Honor, and the Briscoes weren't going to have one. With they fucking worked their ass off here, man. This is an incredibly committed performance from all 4 men. You could tell how much it meant to them. I think it's a special match. It isn't their best match, but for the moment, I mean, they nail it for what the moment called for. Bob, I know we've talked about this before, so we'll kind of go with you first because I know we did Honor Hour before and you saw it then. But what did you think revisiting it, mate?
Yeah, actually, I enjoyed it today while I was watching it. You add in all the circumstances like you talked about. It really does make for kind of a special environment. And, of the matches we watched, it's probably in the bottom half, I think. I don't think that's really going on a limb or anything. But, it has its place. And, if this was it would have been a really nice way for them to kind of get sent off. But obviously, we have a whole another year that we could talk about in a little bit. But just for what it is and for, that iteration of the promotion kind of not being around anymore and them being the only guys kind of from that original crop that were still there, it was really cool that they got to do that.
It's just, there's such an sincerity to how much it meant to everyone involved.
Yeah.
And the crowd was pretty quiet that night because the product was cold. Most people there didn't care about the current stories. They were just there because it's Ring of Honor Final Battle and it could be the last show. But the way they respond to the Briscoes, man, it's real. I mean, anyone that's ever loved Ring of Honor loves that team because they're always there. As we've said throughout this show. So it's a special one for me. I have very fond memories of it. Oracle, I know you saw the highlight package for this one. What did you make of those highlights?
The match looked good from the highlights. This might be like the 4th or 5th Matt Taven match I've ever seen. He looks like a fucking dude, bro, that's in like a fraternity who like just wanders around the fucking party with like the beer in his hand, and he's like a fucking, I don't know, you just kind of want to beat his ass and throw him off the deck.
That's what Sinclair saw as the face of their brand, brother.
Yeah, this was good. The highlights that I saw were really good. Mark Briscoe takes a psychotic bump off of a outside of the ring Doomsday device.
That is awesome, yeah.
That is like the way that he lands on the backflip bump.
It's nuts.
He
bounces off the floor, right?
And it's like, good lord! And of course, that that really gets the crowd going. Because I saw like the 3-minute, like the 4-minute clip from Ring of Honor, and then I saw like a longer clip of the Bad Disturbed song. But yeah, this was good, and of course, it or at least good from what I saw. It of course set up. I think I've seen the post match before, where after I come out when the lights go out, whatever. Of course, it sets up that the legendary feud that we got this past year. So
absolutely,
I thought it was a good match. Again, from what I saw, because I can't operate. I can't operate technology properly. But
Alex, what did you make of this?
Yeah, I joke about Taven a lot, and in my circle of Twitter, I drive a lot of the jokes about him. But he's always been fine. He's a guy that just like the expectations of him were higher than he could achieve, and I don't mean to. I know that sounds really like a backhanded compliment, but it's just like some dudes are mid-card workers, man. No shame in it. Bennett, on the other hand, is like, I would rather watch paint dry than that guy, man. Like it's pretty rough. Now I will be in endless awe and respect of him and Maria for the fucking Carney move they pulled on the WWF when they got signed to them. That's great, and I'm glad he got all his ducks in a row with his personal life and all that shit. That's great. But so like something like this is kind of for me. But like you said, I guess I kind of until halfway through the match didn't dawn on me the significance of it. That these guys were in this match not knowing, they probably thought this was the last like Ring of Honor match they were going to have, so they're going to go all out for it. Taven always did have a good, the taker dive, the over the top rope suicide dive was always really good, and the spot in particular, the sequence of the Doomsday device with the suicide dive, that's like the type of shit you would do in No Mercy. Like you think like no one will ever do this ever. And so it's really fantastic to see. Good brother Ian Riccaboni. Sometimes when announcers get a bit cute and try to coin a phrase, it kind of rubs me the wrong way. But when Mark does a blockbuster and he said he made it a blockbuster night, I thought that was absolutely fantastic. I thought that was tremendous. They work really hard, and there's one part in it though where Taven goes for like a frog splash, and they do the the very standard knees up, but Taven just takes it full force. Yeah, like it's I think it's Jay, but he just like that shit could have broke his ribs, that type of thing. It's I didn't find it to be the same level of kind of like, ooh, I didn't know about this match as the one prior, but like I said from the jump, no bad matches, and everyone's working really hard in this to the point of by the end, it was just like, well done, lads.
I have to do this quickly. Have you ever heard the Machine Gun Carl Anderson talk about Matt Taven's dive, Alex?
I've heard him talk about the one where he dove onto George Steele, but I don't know.
No,
okay.
Carl, he kept saying to the boys about the dead man's dive. And like everyone assumed he was talking about the Undertaker because like as you just said then, that's like the spot, right? He was like, no man, like I looked up at him and I thought I don't think I can do this anymore. He had to catch him on it once, and look, he claims he like looked up at him and he's like career flashed before his eyes. Like this is the end, He was like, he's a big kid, man. I don't know if I could do this. So That always comes to mind when I think of that dive. But nonetheless, shout out to Maria for always doing some fucking bump. I remember watching this live, and as soon as she came out, being like, Maria's definitely going to take a bump in this deal. Like, she hadn't been around. The reason the audience reacted to that way is because she was kind of doing she was doing a great job with the Ring of Honor Women's Division. She wasn't on screen with the Kingdom, right? So that was that deal. Cool thing for the last show as that time, anyway. I think they work the perfect match for this kind of show in the sense that they don't do like a long heat segment. It's mostly in and out, back and forth.
Yeah.
That's what the audience wants, man. Like it's kind of celebratory in that way. They tear up. I love this match. Again, color changes things. Jay gets busted open in this one. It changes the atmosphere some. And then we get into the post match. So you have that classic line. I know AEW rightly used it in their tribute videos, Jay. This might be the end of an era, but it's damn sure ain't the end of the Briscoes. They call out any team in the world. The lights go out. The crowd knows. Fucking music plays and they're FTR and we get right into it. And Dax, indeed, and Dax recently said this was I think he said they didn't interact whatsoever until they were in there fighting. And Dax described it as like, I think they knew how we were going to approach this, and we certainly felt we knew how they were going to approach it. So we just all beat the fuck out of each other, and you can see that as some live rounds on display. And I guess it would make sense, we're kind of. Before we move on to the FTR things, I do want to talk about it. Other things from this decade, again, not as nearly packed to a kind of pool, but I think the program of Guerrillas of Destiny is probably that team's best work ever. And it's the best they've ever been as a tag. I also, I was at one of them, but they had a lot of matches with the Young Bucks that were damn good. So they're the two that stand out to me. Alex, are there any matches from the tag matches from the last decade that jump out to you, other than obviously the FTR thing we'll get into?
As I shit on the summer of 2019 wrestling, of course, it was like the time I decided to travel to another country to watch wrestling. That's when I went to Toronto for SummerSlam. And that weekend, Ring of Honor ran a show at the Maple Leaf Gardens. The house was light, brother. But I was just like marking out being in the Maple Leaf Gardens. It was like, holy shit, the Beatles played here, for fuck's sake. Like, the main event of that show, though, was Guerrillas of Destiny and the Briscoes in a ladder match because there was like multiple tag titles involved or something, I think.
Yeah.
And it's kind of what we've talked about so far of like there was just a commitment to unadulterated chaos for about 18 minutes. And, they did some crazy shit. Tama did, I think they did the spot where like the Money in the Bank thing where they bridged the ladder and he ran up it and gave like a gun stun off the top of it to one of them. It was fantastic. So that one's a lot of fun. I don't know where you can find that. But good luck.
That might actually be on a club. It might be.
And then the mixed bag that was Supercard of Honor 12 does feature the Briscoes against Jay Lethal and Hiroshi Tanahashi in a really solid match. There was one point in it too where I thought Tanahashi and Lethal were going to win the tag belts. There's one really good like false finish. That's just such a weird show because it was one of those that it was their biggest attendance ever up to date, but no one gave a shit about anything until like Kenny and Cody had their match. So
yeah,
it's that would honestly be it because and also for historical significance, they wrestled SCU at All In. That's worth checking out just for the sake of it.
There's a lot of good stuff. It's more just a case of you'd be best served just watching a portion of the TV, and when they pop up, you'll get good matches. But it's just not. It wasn't formatted the same way. The promotion just didn't function the same way. Yeah. The best way to kind of explain it.
Their cinematic match is very good too.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. The fight on the farm. Yeah, that's fun.
Well, I mean, that's what Bob deemed necessary at that point after the swamp fight with the Fiend and Braun Strowman.
Let's talk about. We won't go kind of match for match because there's just so much, and I'm lucky enough to say that I've had the platforms to talk about this series at length, so I'm content with my coverage of it. I'm thankful for Monty giving me the chance to write about all three of these matches on Wrestle Furious. More than ever, I appreciate that. But okay, Alex.
Before we go to the FTR thing, they had bangers with Red Dragon too. I mean,
good call.
It's kind of funny to think of the downtime of Ring of Honor when you had two great tag teams of their era like that in there.
Yeah, man. There's still a lot of good stuff, right? It wasn't the same in terms of relevance. But yeah, I covered all three of those matches, and we did review shows for all of those. And I think the best way for me to explain, like those matches just mean an awful lot to me. I remember them all so vividly. I've never watched a wrestling match more than I've watched the first FTR Briscoes. I think it's the most perfect match you could ever have. I just think it's, and I've talked to Alex before, but like, I'm incredibly jealous of you being there for that, because it wasn't just a perfect match. You guys were a part of that perfection, right? The atmosphere and the way that match felt like it was on a different show to everything else. One of those magical nights we talk about, and I think it was always obvious. If you knew, you knew. Like, oh yeah, when they lock up with FTR, that's gonna be pretty fucking good. I don't think anyone could have quite foreseen the heights they would reach together. I don't want to do the cage match bit is like a thing we do playfully, but it is worth noting that as great as this team as the Briscoes were throughout their career, these 3 matches are their top 3 matches on that site. The second one is the lowest, an embarrassing like 9.4 or some shit. And the best thing I can say about this trilogy that will always make it just so remarkable in my view is each match is different. The first one is just a thriller. It's breathtaking. I mean, it's just fabulous in every which way. The second one, they slow it way down. They have the 2 out of 3 fall stipulation. It's like this sort of heated, enduring kind of drama. There's so much physicality, and it's has an extensive heat segment. And then the third one is it's the horror film. That shit is harrowing, man. I mean, that is a violent masterpiece. So they all stand alone. They're even better when put together. I love those matches forever and ever. Oracle, I remember vividly getting a text from you on the night of the first match, and you kind of saying, these are the matches you read about from yesteryear, and special times, man. Thoughts on the FTR trilogy as we kind of wrap up on this great tag team career.
I remember when we were doing our shows last winter, going into Mania season, I kept being like this is like, and even probably before in late 2021, I was like, when the hell are we supposed to get this?
Yeah.
FTR Briscoes match. I want to see this shit, because I was seeing these promos and I was getting mad,
Mm-hmm.
And there were things being thrown around where it was going to be or whatever. And I was like, I just want to see them, I come on, this is like the most exciting match you could possibly make. And so when it was announced, of course, we were all hype about it. And I mean, it really is, one of those legendary feuds, even before, Jay's tragic passing a few weeks ago, it was already a legendary feud.
For sure.
They made their mark, and that first match was just, I mean, it was my 2022 match of the year. Just an incredible experience watching it, even on my TV, just completely blown away by it. I'll never forget Joe posting this frantic, almost manic video afterwards, being like, you're pacing around your home and just talking about how great it and special of a match it was. And of course we were going gaga over it on one of our shows that week, but just an incredible match. And of course, their 2 follow-ups were outstanding as well. That final match, man, the dog collar was just masterful. Bloody, brawling, war. Mark takes another crazy bump in that match. What does he does with the chair?
He gets yanked onto the chairs from the top.
Yeah.
And the way they set it up too is so great, where he wants to do something to Cash, and Jay is like, Doomsday. He calls him back, so Mark looks this way to try and do the Doomsday device, and Cash fucking yanks his face. Incredible spot. That's
just amazing stuff. One of the all-time great feuds that I've ever been able to see in my almost 25 years of watching wrestling. Just one of the better feuds you'll ever see in wrestling.
Yeah, a classic, instant classic. And I'm glad you noted that, to Oracle, because it's rightly we are all quick to celebrate these men and women when they leave us point, but it is worth noting that we were all talking about this feud this way immediately.
Yeah.
You know, this is not like not reactionary in the slightest. Like this is something that we've talked about throughout the last year this way. So, Bobby, I know you kind of spoke about it a little bit earlier, but FTR and the Briscoes, man.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. The hype for the first one was just kind of so high. And, like, you know, from Final Battle to when it actually happened was like, what, 3 full months? And, you know, Oracle talked about the speculation, when will it be? And then, you know, to do that match and have it live up to that hype, I think is really special. And then to still do it 2 more times in the span of 9 months or whatever, and just kind of progressive. Like the second match, you know, it's different. I'm not going to say it's bad. It's obviously very good. I finally watched it a little bit ago. But yeah, the third one, just kind of close it out like that. Like, it's incredible. Like, you're not going to see anything like that probably ever again.
It's also worth noting, you know, the second show, it was not always the plan to do the rematch. And then I believe a few weeks before they came to that conclusion. The third show, Dax recently said that he thought there was a chance they were not even going to be on Final Battle because it got so close. He thought they might have it off. And Tony, I think, contacted him the Tuesday before the pay-per-view and was like, this is what I want to do. You know, and I think Dax's description was like, we felt like it was best for the show. And, you know, obviously it was a chance to repay the favor, so to speak, because the Briscoes are going to be sticking around. So, you know, it's just as weird as it is to say, because it's so unimportant in the grand scheme of things. I'm really thankful that we got this match because like the third match was really unlikely to happen until the week of when Final Battle needed something. And again, as irrelevant
it was only announced like 4 days beforehand.
You was at the TV, right?
Yeah, I couldn't remember if that was the week before or the week of.
Yeah. So
week of because they were in Texas. Yeah.
Right. So again, completely irrelevant in the grand scheme of things, but as a wrestling fan, I'm so glad we got that third piece. And again, as nothing as it means in the real world, it's fucking cool that they got to have those belts one last time. Right, 13 times. I mean, good lord, that's outrageous. Alex, you were there for the first one. Thoughts on that special trilogy, FTR Briscoes?
Ring of Honor champion Chris Jericho wasn't packing them in, brother. They had to add something special to it. I can't believe it. Yeah, man, that whole night, that show was one of the most unique experiences for me as a wrestling fan. Maybe one day can discuss that in full, but we're talking about FTR and the Briscoes. And, you know, I've been extremely fortunate as a fan of fake sports. You know, I got to be there live for Taker and Shawn at 25, for Rock and Cena. You know, as a little kid, I was there for Bret Hart and Steve Austin at WrestleMania 13. I've seen all kinds of random shit. The Undertaker show up at a Waco house show in 2013. Like, I've seen all these things with like varying. I was at the TNA pay-per-view where the fucking roof caught on fire. Like,
Trent Seven on Rampage,
brother. I laughed for like 5
Me too,
minutes.
brother.
You know, just some fortunate things I've seen. I've been to a bunch of different shows. The point is, I've seen very special things, and that match was as special as anything I've ever seen at a wrestling show I've ever been to, or like a legitimate sporting event for that matter. And it was wholly unique in the sense too that, you know, the place wasn't sold out, but like everyone there was like this communal sense when that match happened, because that whole show's fucking weird, man. But like when they came out, it was like, well, this is what we're here for. And, you know, I say The Dark Knight, you can insert whatever movie you want to, but like living through The Dark Knight and like the hype going into it of like, this is unobtainable. They're not going to be able to deliver a movie that people will think is as good as the hype going into it. And then The Dark Knight came out and everyone was just like, holy shit, that's the greatest movie of all time. You know what I mean? And I'm not trying to spark any kind of fucking comic book debate, so just keep it to yourself. But like, that was that match. Is like, well, this is awesome. And because as time has shown, there's a lot of dream matches that happen on paper and then they happen. It's like, well, that was fun. But you know, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And like from the first lockup, that first match is just like magic is the word to describe it. And there's like not a missed beat, and there's like no lull, and there's no and a lot of that has to go to the guys involved too, not to be like fucking super dramatic about wrestling or melodramatic. Is like it seemed as though those 4 guys were meant to
I
perform with
agree.
one another,
Yeah.
and everything just kind of meshed, and it was a perfect night at the office. When it was over, I started laughing. I was like, "Oh yeah, Bandito's got to wrestle fucking Jonathan Gresham."
Yeah.
And then the other 2 matches are very good. I can't separate that personal attachment I have from the first match being there live, and like what that match kind of meant, and just everything else that weekend kind of is almost like a distant memory, because it's like that's kind of at the forefront. It's very rare that, especially in my adult years, now that I know what like words truly mean, of calling something in fucking professional wrestling special. That match and that feud was special, and it deserves all the hyperbolic praise that it's received up until this point.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of overlap in terms of, if you're a fan of the Briscoes, I think there's a very good chance you're a fan of FTR, and vice versa. There's a lot of overlap in terms of their like what they kind of symbolize in the industry, and stylistically there's overlap too. But I think the main thing that made them such a magical kind of marriage was that shared mindset they had. Like we talk a lot on this show about the Briscoes and kind of, look, man, no matter how many's out there, we're going to give it what we got. And I think. I'll always remember after the second match, Dax getting the mic and be like, I know everyone calls me a fucking mark, but and it's like, yeah, man, like, let's be real. You have to be attached to your work in a sort of inhumane degree to put the matches in that these fellas did. I mean, they destroyed each other out there in a way that was like dramatic, and man.
Do you remember when after the first match, the Bucks did that run in, and then Dax, I think it was Dax, is like, yeah, we'll see y'all on Wednesday, and it's not going to be no damn gymnastics routine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's one of the last shots we got of them on like a real, because I know they worked the House of Glory show, but I always remember it. I tweeted the video of this too, because I love tag team wrestling. It's my favorite part of wrestling by far. I just love it, and the main thing I love about it is it's not just the innovation on a physical level and the creativity you can do with it, with the kind of chemistry involved and such, but I just love that kind of human element of a tag match. The idea of 2 brothers with one mission, or 2 friends with one goal, and the way the best tag teams can feel connected. And that second match, I always remember the Doomsday, and Mark goes to get the pin, and he fucking points out to Cash, who's trying to break it up. Jay blocks the save, and it's like they feel like they're one. And I think what made those matches so special is they both have that in such a rich way. FTR are best friends and they feel totally inseparable. It's unfathomable, the idea they're not going to be together at some point, Yeah. And the Briscoes obviously were the same way, even with all their matches against each other. It was, and frankly still is, unfathomable. I will always remember after the dog collar match, and both, everyone's soaking it in. FTR are sitting there, just in fucking covered in blood. Jay's in one corner, Mark's in the other, and they both walk to the middle. And they share this hug, man, that's like, it's so raw. And it's, if you have a friend or a brother, whoever it may be, that's wrestling, because wrestling is a very unique medium in the way it can marry fiction and reality. They just want a fake match. What does that mean? But that's real. You can see them hug each other, And to me, that's how I always remember them, because that's the last time we saw them. Sad as it is, that was it. So, as you can see, those matches mean an awful lot to me. Nonetheless, we'll move on here. I'll throw this to someone else.
It's really important. Yeah, it's really important to call out that what Devin and yourself said too is like, this isn't romanticizing something after the fact. These matches were very well regarded, and also it's like the Briscoes in general too. It's after the passing of Jay, these guys were already, anyone who knew what the fuck they were talking about considered these guys one of the greatest tag teams of all time. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, who was it? Lars Fredrickson who I'm not the biggest Rancid fan in the world, but had the
Mhm.
really good tweet about it felt like when Joe Strummer died or when one of the Ramones died, of like someone who like kind of he's said like, someone who kind of crafted their own way, and that is, they have the legendary story of the WWE tryout match, and I think it was the Usos they wrestled, and I love Jay's story about like he never thought like a grown man could be so intimidating until he was on the top rope and he looked up and he said Vince was just with his hands on his hips watching at the top of the ramp, and he was like, holy shit. And that whole thing gave us at least in my mind, Johnny Ace, you're not cosmetically pleasing, that whole thing. And
classic
so
promo,
yeah. I started it with saying like all these guys from that era, I didn't have really too many friends in high school and whatnot, so independent wrestling meant a lot to me. So all those guys from that era have like that golden age mean a lot. And so it's a bummer, but hell of a body of work he left behind. And it seemed like a guy too that tried to do the best he could in life. So it's sad, but
absolutely.
Yeah.
Bobby, you got any kind of final thoughts, mate, you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think the real thing about the Briscoes, like, and Alex brought this up a little bit, like, they don't have any bad matches. Like, even if you go on Cage Match, I think the lowest rated match, like, as tag team is that Hammerstein match, which probably would have been all right if it didn't get cut for time.
Fucking GCW, man.
Yeah, I know. But, like, and people brought it up in the chat, like, that top 5 Dead or Alive thing, it's cool, it rhymes, but it's also probably factual, like, I don't know that I can name too many teams better than them. Just, body of work, kind of style, just everything they did. And all of that without ever getting like a big time run in a major American promotion. I know Ring of Honor kind of had its moments, but like it was never WWE or TNA or, AEW, obviously. And to do all this and kind of have this legacy with that is really special.
Indeed. You got us all for emotional over here. It's been a show. Oracle?
Yeah.
Thoughts on their legacy, mate?
It's funny because, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that they would have left, certainly a lasting impression if they were in WWE or AEW or hell, I mean, even in TNA, I'm sure they would have fucking had some awesome shit,
Sure.
But it kind of.
Hold on, they were in TNA. They got some shots there in early 2002. They got to go in there, and
they also they won the belts last year in TNA.
Impact doesn't really. I mean, that's just like that doesn't.
To steal a line from Ric Flair, what is TNA? What is that?
But they it really kind of adds to their legacy. I think that they never went anywhere. Like they made it, on their own. Of course, they were obviously, Ring of Honor legends and mainstays, and were there from really, let's be honest, the beginning to the end of Ring of Honor. Ring of Honor now is just a sort of, Tony Khan sort of trying to kind of carrying on the legacy, and or at least Sean, having the. Having the tape library, at least, I guess I'll say that.
We're in the Sean Stasiak, Chuck Palumbo, and Sean O'Hare phase of WCW here with Ring of Honor.
I don't know. I think that was the PCO stage, I gotta say, but I don't know. I think we're just in uncharted territory at this point, honestly.
PCO was
fat, irresponsible experiment. Yeah, there you go. That 70s guy, PCO.
But I mean, just an all-time great tag team. I'm lazy and stupid and get caught up in my other little little side projects and crap, so I haven't seen nearly enough Briscoes as I should have. Obviously, one day I'll put my focus on that. But just an unbelievably great all-time team. Just like, even it's funny because even though I wouldn't like watch Ring of Honor TV the last 10-12 years, anytime I'd see like a Jay Briscoe promo, right, or just a Briscoes promo in general, and I would turn it on just because it's or like I'd see the clip on going through Twitter feed at 2 a.m. or whatever. Just because there were such special promos too, but I mean just an amazing team. Became complete workers in the last 5 years. Just a special team. Absolute legends. Certainly. I mean, the Hall of Fame stuff is whatever. Like in terms of just like wrestling Hall of Fame in general. But to me, they're Hall of Famers. Because they were so integral to the sort of post Big Three. Wrestling environment in the States.
They defined the promotion that defined wrestling, right? In a lot of ways.
Yep, absolutely.
They and also just like the pure fascination of their story. They were shoot chicken farmers that like wrestling was something they just enjoyed kind of doing.
Yeah. Go ahead, Alex.
I was gonna say Ben Dixon asked favorite Briscoe promo lines. Mine always goes to it was after Jay lost the title, I think, and it was the first time Mark and Jay were teaming again. And Jay is just kind of pacing in the background, and Mark goes, "Let me ask you something. Do a duck quack? Does a donkey hee-haw? Are the Briscoes still the baddest tag team in Ring of Honor?" That was always my favorite line.
There's so many, man. I loved their extensive Bret Hart Terry Funk comp for the fucking FTR trilogy match where they were like, it was a cage match. It's like fantasy booking. It was great. There's so many. But I think, it kind of goes without saying, you can see watching us talk about this, that, this means a lot to us. And I think, the other day I was working on my book project, which is, this whole shit fantasy idea of the real world champion, and what that meant once upon a time, and what it could, what it still means to kind of the nerds of our wrestling community like myself. And I was writing about Jay, who obviously was the Ring of Honor world champ a couple of times, and there's this idea that I can't quite avoid when I talk about this topic, is like, for a lot of us, whether you like modern wrestling, most of us could agree on the Briscoes, because they carried so many of the things that we love about wrestling of yesteryear and wrestling's glory days, quote unquote. But they had the enthusiasm and innovation and mindset of so many of the modern guys. They were such a wonderful marriage, and Mark still is. Let me be clear. So I was kind of just thinking about a lot as I was writing about him, and I think there's a lesson in that, in terms of Alex, you were talking earlier about that kind of golden generation. I can't stress this enough. You've got to appreciate those guys while so many of them are still rolling. There will never ever be a crop like that one again. I mean, it's outrageous. Some of these guys are still some of the most relevant wrestlers in the world. They're still rolling, and the Briscoes were that way until and they would have been that way forever, I have no doubt. And Mark will continue to be. So
they really were like
special time.
It was like them and AJ were because some people, even like a Danielson, some people were detractors of like, he's kind of boring. It's AJ and the Briscoes were like the guys from that era of like walk the line, as you said, of like they could do all the crazy spotty stuff that makes people go ooh, but then also like people like me, it used to be better crowd, and then they could do shit to entertain us, but that exactly what you said, the two extreme sides of the spectrum being FTR and Bucks for the modern tag generation. The Briscoes were like in between and able to have great matches with both of them. And that's all my forum days, all my Twitter days. I never recall someone griping about the Briscoes approach to wrestling.
And, there is something, I think there's something to be said for the idea that, we've all talked about Ring of Honor. Is it still Ring of Honor or whatever? And it's like, look, ultimately, I think in a lot of ways, the Ring of Honor we'll think of was gone a long, long time ago anyway. And you kind of have to live what that means and what that represents, those letters. I do think it's very cool that, if nothing else, undeniably, the singular hit of Tony Khan's first year as Ring of Honor owner was those 3 matches. And the idea that like Jay got them through those that turbulence, if nothing else, there's something cool to that, I think, in a kind of sort of symbolic way. But top 5 that are alive, right? We all said it. It's like it speaks for itself. I think how much that team means to those of us that watch them closely. That says it better than any word ever could or any, they're singular, man. They're special, one of the greatest teams ever. And Jay is just one of the most engaging wrestlers of an era that was stacked with engaging guys, just incredible pro wrestlers. So there you go, folks. Briscoes, Grin Grappler in the books. We will now look ahead to next month, which is going to be a hilarious thing compared to this. But I'm glad we could do this, fellas. This was a great time. All right. Everyone ready to look at next month's Grin Grappler? Or has anyone got anything else they'd like to add? I know we've all got a good chance to speak on it. So I think we're ready to go, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, next month February is not a loaded month for wrestler birthdays. We have some interesting ones here. The obvious name that I don't think is necessarily the most interesting name and also would make Bob mad is the little-known wrestler known as the Nature Boy Ric Flair. I'm not sure there's anything left to say about his career after he has made 12 documentaries at this point, but listen, bro, I can't dunk on him for crying on fucking screen.
Oh, dude, I was about to say, I was getting emotional about not having friends in high school, so Ring of Honor was like my escape. But I missed I should have used the Flair line when I was getting verklempt there. For all I've done wrong, I must have done something right.
I can't dunk on it tonight, bro. We'll save it for next month.
Oh my gosh, Ashley.
In fairness, though, it wasn't like we burst into tears.
No,
we didn't do it because it wasn't like someone told us we were good at wrestling and we just like.
Oh man, quick sidebar. Brett's my favorite. I love Brett. He's like a personal hero of mine. But that, do you remember that they were gonna make it a series, but it so underperformed they didn't do anymore? It was the Greatest Rivals, where him and Sean were like, JR interviewed him, and of course Jim Ross doesn't help anything. He's like, you hated him, he's like just feeding the fire the whole time. But like Brett, the whole time Brett's talking about like, oh, and then Davey died, oh, and then Owen died, oh, Jim. He's like going down the list of all the people that died, but then he starts talking about losing a fake belt and he gets emotional. He's like, and then they just screwed me that night. That type of thing. It's fucking ridiculous. And then, JJ called out Sean the entire time, like, looking this way and like, I don't remember that happening.
So we have Ric Flair. We have AEW Elevation play-by-play commentator, Paul White, the Big Show, which I think could be interesting because he's had a really interesting career.
That would have we could have a good lineup for that, yeah.
Floyd Mayweather for sure, brother. That fucking match rules.
That does roll. We have Shinsuke Nakamura. It's an interesting one. And we have Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. One of my personal favorites, I must say.
Steamboat!
The only issue with Steamer is he was the exact same wrestler for approximately 20 years. And so therefore the axe would just be us be like, man, the hell of a seller. What a babyface this guy is,
We just watch the classics, man. That's all I gotta do with him.
He had that thing that was like, it's literally that bit from The Office where Creed thinks he's old, so he dyes his hair. Ricky came back at 25 and wrestled with Jericho and like wound back the clock, and then at the pay-per-view the next month has the fucking copy toner black hair like spiked up and ready to go.
Ruled. I'm low-key thinking Paul White.
Yeah.
But I do like the Nakamura one too because he's had a really like unique career because of the WWE run.
How would you structure that? First act would be.
I guess you would do like Shooter Nakamura,
the new Three Musketeers, and then King of Strong Style, and then WWE.
Yeah. And I guess you'd have to do WWE. You'd kind of have to do one NXT match, one main wrestling to capture it. I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Nakamura has 2 good WWE matches. Well, of course, now I'm blanking. But
well, he has the Sammy match.
Yeah.
well, yeah, I'm trying to think. Man, he had that fucking banger with Rusev the month before WrestleMania 34.
The first Bob Roode match is fucking tremendous.
That match is outstanding.
That's an NWA title match right there, bro. That's some good shit. Main roster. I'm sure one exists.
The match he had this past summer with Gunther was really good.
Yeah.
There you go, folks. I mean, granted, I think Gunther could have a good match from me at this point, but still.
Oh, yeah. He's carried any one of us to 3 1/4.
Yeah, I think it'd be an interesting show. I don't know. Bobby, where are you leaning on this one, mate?
I originally went with Paul White, but you guys are kind of talking me into Shinsuke.
Well, what would be the Paul White act? Let's try and figure this out before we make a decision.
I'm not super familiar with the WCW stuff.
The monster truck match.
We would have to throw in one because he was there for
Get
so
some
long.
help, dude.
What about the match isn't really about him though, but I mean he's in it. What about I don't know. It's kind of long, but it is good and fun. What about Giant and Luger versus Hogan and Rodman at Bash the Beast 97?
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
We could do it as like a DVD extra type thing because the match is like 3 minutes long. He had this match with Meng on Nitro that was worked like a shoot. That was just a piece of art.
I think with Paul White, we'd probably just go 90s, noughties, 10s, right? Probably best way to do it.
Yeah,
because I think then you can kind of bleed over a little bit.
What's that King of the Ring? Was it the King of the Ring 99 where he and Kane do a bunch of crazy spots and have like a spot fest?
There was the match they had at like Backlash 06 or 07 where they like hate fucked the crowd with chain wrestling.
That rolled. Yeah.
But yeah, Big Show didn't have any good matches in the WWE until like 02.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I think it's probably best to do it like because then with the 2000s you could kind of go into the second half when he comes back.
Yeah, you got Brock Survivor Series 2002, all timer right there.
Good match.
I think you do Brock and then you can do the Floyd match because the Floyd match was a masterpiece from Big Show. I thought
that was one of his crowning achievements. And then the third act you'd have to do Sheamus at Hell in a Cell 2012.
Absolutely
is amazing. And then
probably the Roman match from Extreme Rules.
That match is really good. The last one standing. Yeah.
Okay.
It's the one where they were doing the please retire shit, and he kind of he kind of proved the point with that one. That was really impressive.
Oh yeah, that ruled.
Oh, the Braun matches.
Yes.
Oh my god. Do you remember he just kept getting killed by Braun like 4 times?
He the 2017 Rumble, they do like the face off with Show and Braun, and then like Show is like doing the carry, he's gonna throw him out, and then Braun slips out behind him and just hoofs Big Show over, and then Big Show hits the ground and legit just does the like, oh damn, I missed it.
Because the thing, I mean, obviously, I think, I'm really torn on this. I don't know.
Yeah, those two middle ones are
potential
bangers.
Oracle, where are you leaning on this, Shin or Paul White?
The Royal Rumble has come down to Shinsuke Nakamura and the Big Show Paul White.
I think I'd rather do the Big Show.
It feels more interesting, right?
Yeah.
I also my fear with the Shin one is it just ends up with us just being like, man, the 2010s in WWE fucking sucked. You know?
Nakamura too. It's like for what we do here, his story is more interesting than what we would really get into. Like,
yeah, I agree.
And I don't mean that to bury our gimmick here, but like,
no, I agree.
Because we would want to do like his match with Brock, and that match sucks, and then we'd have to like talk about the whole thing around it and all that shit.
Yeah, I agree. I also think Show is like he kind of fits our mold in that I think gets a lot of shit unfairly, and at times is a really fucking good wrestler. You know, especially for weak for his role. I'm thinking Big Show, boys. Are we locking this in?
Yeah, we'll have to refine the first act.
Yeah, I'm going to dig through and kind of consider, because I do think we're probably forgetting stuff, because he was around for so long. We must be forgetting stuff elsewhere too. But
we got to get cigarette smoking Big Show when he was in the NWO and he came out with the cigarette.
Real graps. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think he's had a very unique career.
Let's just do Sold Out 98 where Nash fucking.
Well,
Great American Bash 96, Randy Savage the Giant World title main event. There you go.
Yeah, he loved Savage. He loved working with Savage. That'll be a fun one. I think that's what we're going to go with, folks. Bob, are you okay with this?
Yeah.
You're not going to whine on Twitter afterwards? Not going to leak anything to Dave fucking Mills or whoever?
Not tonight.
No.
Yeah,
Mike
next
Johnson.
month when we have it planned, 6:55 Central. Hey, man, I'm not coming. You guys they picked the worst option. I'm not coming.
There you go, folks. Grin Grappler, the Big Show, the Giant, Paul Wyatt, whatever the fuck we're calling him at this point, I don't know. As confirmed, shoot would call him the Gorilla Monsoon of the generation on commentary.
No
I'm
more
told
BS.
I'm told that last night he did solo comms on Elevation. Joey Styles, beautiful.
My God.
Shout out to him. The big man is back. The big man is back.
I'm just thinking of Big Show now. Cat fight.
Matt did send me a clip where he was talking about Billy Starks, and he was talking about how good she's been in recent weeks. He goes, "I'm telling you, folks, you're gonna have to sign her." like he's on a podcast. All right. Anyway, on that note, we'll be back for that later this month. Hopefully, we'll get in February so we can get back in a rhythm on this. But this was a wonderful, wonderful time. Bobby, any final words, mate? Anything to plug? Anything to promote?
No, I don't think so. This was very good. I'm glad we got to do this. Late Night Grin, Thursday night. And I think that's all I'm doing the rest of the week. But
you heard about that show, Bob? Special show on Thursday.
Is it?
It's the trade deadline on Thursday.
Oh, yeah.
We're doing 3 hours of wrestling trades. I've told Manny to prepare the battlefield for this,
Ours are going to actually be good, though.
Well, I tried it for about 10 minutes earlier and nearly had a fucking aneurysm, so I don't think it will be, but, we'll see. Get to work on that, Bobby. All right, mate?
Mm-hmm.
Stop preparing a spreadsheet. The Oracle of Wrestling. Any final words? Any plugs? Any promotions?
I think either next Tuesday or the Tuesday after, we're going to do, what is it? Where are we at? July 96 now?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, that's a big one. So Historical Oracle will return probably in a week, could be 2 weeks, because I think we'll probably save the last week for Grin Grappler of the Big Show.
There you go.
So I think we'll do that next week, maybe the week after.
Hey, Oracle, look at this.
I forgot about that.
Don't call it a comeback, folks. Do not call it a comeback.
The mood is about to change.
Alex, as always, mate, please promote your wonderful movie podcast, The Contrarians.
Yeah, we are thecontrarians.com. You can find The Contrarians on any podcatcher. The little icon is a fresh tomato looking a rotten tomato in the mirror. We rage against the Rotten Tomatoes machine. That is our battle cry. At Contrarian Alex on Twitter. At Contrarian Prime for our podcast on Twitter. We are coming up on Labor Day. This god-awful, Nicholas Sparks type romance film with Kate Winslet and Josh Brolin that is very strange. Also, Goodfellas is in the canon, and we have a new project coming up that I'm pretty excited about that will be unveiling pretty soon. So we are thecontrarians.com, at Contrarian Prime on Twitter. Be sure to check it out. Thank you, as always, for having me. It's always my distinct pleasure to be here.
Absolutely, it's our pleasure. Is there any a concern when you do Goodfellas? Is there a concern of there's someone who's going to download this, completely ignore the explanation of our gimmick, and get incredibly hot about everything we say for the first half of the episode? It must happen, right? Must go through your mind.
We've had a few episodes where people just listen to the first half, not at all knowing what our gimmick is, and get some heated comments on it and whatnot. Yeah, Goodfellas is definitely one, because that's there's a whole generation of people whose personality is Goodfellas is their favorite movie of all time.
Look at Bob. Look at Bob.
It's true.
I'm a casino guy, so I'm looking forward to it. And Julio, my co-host, is a Goodfellas guy, so I'm looking forward to the actual discussion about breaking down which one's better, why, that type of thing. Yeah.
There you go, folks. It'll be a who. It always is. I'll be back tomorrow for the Dynamite Grid along myself and Manny. Strong show tomorrow. MJF, Takeshita, Brian and Roosh. Tag title match. There's a whole lot going on tomorrow. It's a loaded show, so we're watching that live on the air. As we always do. Thursday, the flagship trade machine session. Bob's preparing. You can see he's already getting on it now. So, and Friday, this is not confirmed. We've kind of penciled in Matt and I. We may be doing a Briscoes Grin along to kind of cap off this show here and this kind of bulk of content. Pretty common not in a cry on that one. I think we'll be able to avoid that. So this let's hope so anyway. It should be a hell of a time regardless. There's a lot to look forward to. This has been very, very special. I'm very thankful we could do this, boys. Not the circumstances we would have ever hoped for or expected, certainly, but I think we did our best with what we had, right? And we tried our best to do Jay Briscoe and the Briscoes as a team justice. And we hope you enjoyed this, folks. We will see you tomorrow. Some Dynamite grins. All hail and enjoy this outro.